Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And protest erupted across the nation. These are the ICE protests. Very surprising. They're getting violent. Trump's not really pushing back. He's kind of pulling back, letting the states take care of it themselves, kind of what I was asking him to do. And I think it's going to work out in his favor because these protesters, these are not peaceful protests in any way, shape, or form. When we started this channel, we started with the truckers' protest in Canada, and that was the example of a model protest, what you want to happen, extremely peaceful, and actually got results. When they blocked roads, they left a lane open for emergency vehicles.
But before we start, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. I will say hi to the few people that have said hi already. And also reminding you, please comment because we do read all your comments live on stream after each segment. So we're really interested to know what you think. And we're getting closer to 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to everybody that has subscribed. It really does help us out. We are trying to get monetized. And also hello to Nan, who says good afternoon. Nan, let us know what you're cooking today or what you're doing today.
Yeah, and honestly, it's been a big motivation, all the subscribers we've had in the last few days, so it has really helped. Yes. We also have a lot of chisme. That would be gossip in English, from the Grammys. I mean, they were just going absolutely nuts with their acceptance awards. We're going to show a few of those before we get into geopolitics. There's a lot of news with the U.S. and Canada today, and I think our segment on Rumble is a little bit longer than usual.
And also, sorry for being late. Here in Mexico, it is a holiday. It's Candlemas or La Candelaria, if you want it. And also, it's Constitution Day. So everything's closed and we had to do some things where we weren't able to. But yeah, here we are. Thank you for being here.
Okay, let's get right into the breaking news here.
Oh, yes.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And breaking news, of course, that the protests are getting bigger and louder and more annoying. Jennifer says, quote, "These aren't protests, folks. Look at all these people assaulting those officers. These riots are no place for children," which I agree. "Schools are now sending whole classes of kids to protest. Dangerous now. Don't let them take kids to protest."
Well, before we get into the clip, why don't we talk a little bit about this? These started in Minnesota, and Trump kind of poked the bear and activated, it seemed like, every cell in the United States of leftists. And now he's pulling ICE back. So there's nothing to really protest. They have some ICE officers, but only outside of federal buildings, actually protecting the buildings themselves. They're getting violent everywhere from your Georgia, certain parts of Texas, Los Angeles especially. You're seeing this in New York, although New York's extremely cold and trash is filling the street. We're going to get into that in U.S. politics. And then Minnesota is continuing. But they're breaking car windows. They're throwing stuff at night.
Like random people's car windows. That it's not only the ICE vehicles, it's anybody who parked there when they decided to smash windows.
Yeah, they were winning the media war before these protests kind of spread across the nation. I really see the narrative kind of switching now, especially if Trump continues not to kind of provoke them.
Let's see what's kind of going on here.
And pause for a sec. And you can see Mexican flags, Palestinian flags, everything but American flags. I mean, there's one American flag on the ground there, but this is a federal building. They're just throwing things at anybody that's trying to protect the building. They're trying to break out the windows. I mean, we're going to get pretty in depth in this opening segment of breaking news to kind of show what's going on across the nation and how these are much different than what was happening in Minnesota.
And I will say, as someone from the third world, which is Mexico, you import the third world, you become and look like the third world.
Okay, and you can kind of you can kind of leave it there. And yes, the officers have shields, but throwing things at them are completely uncalled for, especially when they're not making arrests in the communities. They've been pulled back to protect these federal buildings. They are doing investigations. He's mainly bringing the IRS and DOJ doing investigations over criminal corruption in Minnesota and a lot of these other places, especially California. But he's really pulling back ICE. And I thought that was the good move for him to do. And it looks like somebody in the administration thought it was a good move as well.
I mean, if you do let them continue doing what they're doing and doing all the mayhem, and it just starts looking bad if the officers and if nobody else is pushing back against it, because they do look deranged. But at the same time, how long are you going to let mayhem just happen?
Well, also, he's going to kind of leave these sanctuary cities or these sanctuary states alone, and he's going to pull funding from them and kind of let them collapse under their own weight, their own police departments. And if they want to have to activate their National Guards and their own military, that is on the states. That's on the Democratic senators and governors, which I think this is the best way going into the midterms.
Maybe. And we do see, for example, failed LA Mayor Karen Bass claiming that the things are under control, similar as she did last summer, until they had to admit that no, they weren't, while footage plays of insurrectionists attacking an ICE facility. She then blames the unrest on ICE for invading the city.
Well, this kind of reminds me of the Summer of Love, when they had a reporter on the ground with buildings burning in the background saying it's a mostly peaceful protest, when you could see it was anything but. This is a very similar situation, except this is not a reporter. This is the mayor talking about it on national news.
This is from Benny Johnson.
Well, I can tell you that the situation is under control, but it is ongoing. And there was a interaction that was violent for a minute, but it was brought under control. First, you had the federal officers defending the federal building, and they acted in the beginning, and they dispersed tear gas. Then when it moved into the street, then, of course, the Los Angeles Police Department takes over. There is a show of force there, but so far they have been managing it. I think it's down to about 150 people, and they're kind of scattered around one particular intersection. So I think that it will end okay, but we are on a tactical alert right now in our city, and all of this is unnecessary. We have to go back to the origin of all of these protests. Nobody would be protesting now in the street if Minneapolis hadn't happened. We wouldn't have had protests in Los Angeles if they hadn't invaded us.
No, okay, first of all, they're not
under the mandate of the people that voted for this to happen.
They're no longer invading them. They're protecting federal buildings so they don't get burned down. There's multiple examples now of these protests actually trying to burn down federal buildings. That's why Donald Trump's saying, oh, we're going to need you to actually protect these federal buildings, but not go out in the community in mass and enforce like you have been.
Mm-hmm. And even CNN now might have to admit that it is getting a bit out of control in LA for mixed order. Even CNN is admitting the riots in Los Angeles outside the federal facility are now out of control.
Well, I believe this was the exact same clip, but this was from on the ground. As Mayor Karen Bass was talking about that, I don't know if she just didn't have a feed of the other newscaster and what was going on the ground, but you could see them chucking things at the police, at federal officers. You can see the pile in front of the shields. That stuff they had been chucking all day. And she's saying there's one violent incident. This is absolutely crazy.
You can see an officer back there. He's alone, and they're just throwing things at him. I mean, it's just pretty incredible that these protesters have overtaken this, and there's no police. I don't see anybody here to kind of manage this crowd. So like I was saying, this is at the tail end of a very long day. Looks like they're cheering because they were able to push that officer back inside. Okay, and now people, okay, all right, hold on. Do you see the police? You can see an officer back there.
And that officer got very lucky he didn't get stuck in that door, like he didn't have an arm out and then the door got jump kicked on his arm. He was actually in, so they shut the door. I thought he was also lucky they didn't try to pry the door open and pull him out and take control of the federal building.
And the questioning of who are these protesters, if they're paid, we have seen some videos coming out of them kind of going off shift and everybody just putting things in a car and leaving after at a 7 p.m. or a certain time. So the financing and the network and the both for Minneapolis, but also now for LA and New York, I think it needs to be further investigated, but it is clear that a lot of these people have a lot of time on their hands. From Kevin Dalton, I'm shocked this guy was able to get time off of work to protest ICE in downtown Los Angeles yesterday. And it is the I won't say what I was going to say.
Pause it for a second. And I'm not necessarily looking at the guy in the front. I think he's just somebody that has a screw loose that's probably in the neighborhood and joins into the protest. But you can see everybody that's organized in the background. They all have gas masks. They all have the cameras. They want to make sure this gets out to national news. Like the LAPD said, or sorry, like the last reporter said, there was about 150 people there. That's easy to get a paid group of about 150. Now in Minnesota, the groups are much larger and they don't look as paid. Yes, they're paid, but there's a lot more, I would say, organic uprising, or the paid protesters are able to activate non-paid members as well. And again, so far we're showing just LA, but we're going to go into other regions of the nation here.
Yes, in New York, people have stormed and occupied the lobby of the Trump Tower in New York City, chanting anti-ICE propaganda. What the H takes police so long to respond. Trump Tower is a massive target. Cops should be close enough to shut down this BS within 30 seconds, says Nick Sorter, and I don't think they want to.
Well, this was typical, especially in Vancouver, not anti-ICE protests, but when we lived there, there was a Trump building and there was constantly protests in front of his hotel. That being said, Trump hotels are targets. Tesla dealerships are targets. Churches are becoming major targets. There's all kinds of clips of them now invading synagogues as well as Christian churches. So they have absolutely no respect. A lot of these are private places and they're just taking them over. Also, surprisingly, Walmarts they're going into.
And Targets.
But
it is private property, so I am surprised that they were able to and have been able to stay that long, and or that Walmart, Target, and other stores are allowing them to stay there for as long as they are.
Well, this is in New York and it's Mondani, and we're going to have some great information about Mondani coming up in the U.S. segment.
Now's the time. From Minnesota to Palestine, general strike. Now's the time.
So you're not allowed to be here. And this administration, so that all of us remember what is being done by Donald Trump, ICE, and this.
And I also want to note the demographics of the people there, because especially in New York, we continue to see it's mostly boomer-aged white people, white women, but also insane white men, as we see this.
Well, before you continue it, I want to say there was this problem at conservative protests. Although these were organic protests we were at in Vancouver, we reported on them a lot when we lived there. The issue was multiple groups would kind of go there, and it was supposed to be a protest maybe against jibby jabs, and it would become a protest for farmers, and a lot of these groups didn't get along. Here, it looks like they're trying to combine the ICE protest, Donald Trump protests, as well as Palestine protests.
This regime. More have to die.
Okay, and that's good. And the problem with this protest is it wasn't violent like the ones in LA, but they are starting to take over public spaces and they are refusing to leave. This public space isn't as bad as the ones we're going to show in a little bit, where these are actually retailers. They're trying to make money. They can cause the people within those spaces to lose their jobs, the business to shut down. We're seeing a lot of Walmarts and Targets closing down in democratic cities because the crime is too high now.
We also continue to see this chanting of slogans that has become commonplace and almost expected from leftist protests. And I didn't grab it, and I know a lot of people don't like him, but James Lindsay had a really good analysis of how during Mao's revolution in China, there was this specific way of propagandizing and using chants to end critical thinking and to just get people to say whatever you want to say and get them riled up. And funnily enough, the name in, I believe it's Chinese or Mandarin Chinese, was called Tifa. So it is interesting, and Tifa. But this constant chanting and this way that they're also, and I wanted to bring it up because also indoctrinating little children into doing this and
yeah, this was
making them think that they're doing something important and that this is becoming commonplace in even, I mean, kindergarten.
Yeah, this was actually one of the more crazy clips that I got. A teacher had organized her 5- and 6-year-old students to go out to the schoolyard. They all made signs in class, brought it out there, and started protesting ICE. But on top of this, we seen in the last clip, they're really combining the ICE protest with the Palestine protest. And I think whatever you think about the two protests, they should definitely keep them separate.
Well, and we saw it also during BLM and Summer of Love. They combine all of these different subject matters because they need to make and amplify whatever support they have. They need to bring in more and more people, even though they make no sense.
Yeah.
But from Right Angle News Network says, quote, shocking video out of course, Portland, Oregon, shows teachers at the Portland Montessori school leading children, some no older than 5 or 6, in an anti-ICE protests.
And Portland used to be such a beautiful city. It was probably one of the hidden gems in the United States, and wokeness has just absolutely not only killed that city, but killed that region. We used to live in Vancouver. I also used to live in Washington State, and that was a beautiful state as well. And what has gone on ideologically there has completely destroyed that state and the leadership of that state. And it's a shame because a lot of the eastern halves of Oregon and Washington and even BC are very conservative. It's those liberal coastal cities that have the majority of the population.
And I will say, look at the teachers from that school and tell me if you have kids or you have ever had kids, if you would let them teach your children. We do see the indoctrination starting early, especially in places where it is just allowed and there's no checks. They're in their playground.
Yeah, and you can hear what they're chanting, no ICE now or ICE out. And I mean, this is a level of indoctrination. These kids don't even know what's going on at that age. Those ideas are really going to stick. They're going to bring them home. Hopefully parents actually have conversations with them. The problem is
they're in Portland.
They're in Portland.
The parents will say, oh, good for you. And I mean, I'm not surprised it is a Montessori school. I lived in Boston for a while when I was little, and I went to a Montessori school, and I still remember how kind of woke it was way back then. And that was a while ago. I'm not as young as I look. So just to think that, of course, it's in Portland, it's a Montessori, look at the teachers. And unfortunately, the parents will, probably cheer it on. But we're also seeing a bunch of Gen Alpha, the ones that are growing up a little bit, have grown up a little bit, but also Gen Z turning on a lot of the things that they were indoctrinated into in school because it became what adults were saying. So now to go against it and to revolt against, as many people do, and a lot of people in their youth did with the hippie movement and then with the wokeness stuff from the millennials. Well, now the revolt and the going against what your parents are saying is become right-wing and conservative. And we are seeing, especially with young men who have been already battered their whole lives and indoctrinated into thinking that they're worthless. And when they're not, they're incredibly important for society. They are now realizing that all they have been taught is lies, luckily. But the women are going in the complete other direction because this framework and this feminization of society, which we did a video about, is what is convenient to them. So they feel comfortable continuing to behave and continuing with the actual narrative or the approved narrative that they have been taught for their whole lives.
Well, there was a lot of clips I left out, but across the nation, schools are having walkouts, especially in these sanctuary states. A lot of people suspect it's organized by teachers and the higher ups in the schools. A lot of parents are actually going into the office, videotaping these things and say, why is my son or daughter involved in this protest? We don't want political activism in the school. And then they're pulling their sons or daughters out of these schools. And
I will continue to say, if you can have the opportunity and feel like you could, homeschool. That's what I plan to do. From Wall Street Apes, also, again, students.
Homeschooling, we showed it in the EU the other day. They're trying to take away the right for homeschooling in the UK specifically. I would expect that to spread.
And again, because we see here from Wall Street Apes, students chant anti-ICE messaging as they march through an Albuquerque, New Mexico Walmart. They repeatedly chant F ICE and intentionally disrupt business. This is what indoctrination looks like. That should be the chant. Instead of this is what democracy looks like, which is one of the things they're always chanting, they should just say this is what indoctrination looks like.
Trump has cut off a lot of money from the U.S.A. ID, a lot of these NGOs, so they can activate small groups of 150 here or 150 there, except in Minnesota, they're much larger. But the protesters that aren't paid protesters, they're able to activate now, and they kind of have to rely on them, are kids in schools. And I'm more than willing to bet they're having to do this through teachers.
They're not in the phone. I really do think we need to make it. And Charlie Kirk had already kind of started doing that, and a lot of other more right, like Nick Fuentes, etc. All those kinds of kids had started to try to make wokeness and this kind of indoctrination seem, for lack of a better word, uncool amongst in schools. And I think that effort needs to continue. And that effort of saying, oh, you're all like woke and you're all like empathetic, fakely empathetic. Well, that's not what we do anymore.
Well, and they really broke through in colleges, and it was because of debate, and it really needs to come back in colleges. They weren't able to break it through into high schools. And naturally, there was a bit of a movement of a counterculture, which ends up being conservative. That's why Gen Alpha is more conservative than any other generation. It's the first conservative generation.
Well, Gen Z, younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
But that being said, it's going to be really hard to get into high schools because you're allowed to go into colleges and do debates and things like this. But it's really the elites in the schools. This would be the teachers. This would be the principals, the HR departments, things like this are going to not allow that message into the schools.
But luckily, it has been spreading through social media. And teachers in schools, as much as they want to think that they have, I mean, we've seen the UK try to ban it in Australia, and we know how well that went. And kids will get around it, and they will find, similar voices and voices that dissent, which will seem like, countercultural to what they're being taught in the ridiculous schools. But the schools need them young to, and I think this is the thought, and this is the way it has worked all the way from since Marxism essentially started. They need them young, but if the young start seeing this as cringe, which I hope they do, the wokeness as cringe, then the counter movement will naturally become turning towards the right.
Well, social media definitely,
and religion.
Social media has a much bigger influence than teachers in schools are going to have. And that's why you're seeing the UK and the EU really go hard into censorship, especially into schools, sending a lot of these kids to re-education classes and things like this if they're caught saying certain messages or looking at certain social media accounts like Andrew Tate. On top of that, if a Democrats get in 2028, I fully expect them to go pretty hard into censorship through the private industry. So this would be through Facebook. They tried to do it through Twitter last time. And
Facebook.
Elon Musk is going to kind of push back on there. He may lose the company at that point because they're going to make it so not profitable and fine him out of existence, or at least try. That's what I would expect. So I think it's important in 2028 that we can really come out and elect the appropriate candidate that's not going to bring us into war and not bring us into censorship.
And this insanity continues to get out of control in Minneapolis. And of course, mainstream news will not show this because this affects the actual working class, which is not just white, but some of them are white. From Right Angle News Network says leftist anti-ICE agitators marched through Minneapolis yesterday, smashing the driver's side windows of cars they encountered, any cars on the street, and leaving many construction and blue-collar workers with their vehicles destroyed, which they're the ones that most need their vehicles.
Yeah, and this is the problem. Minneapolis, ICE is starting to pull back now, and they're not out there like they used to, but they've been able to activate a lot of radicals, and they don't have control of them, so they're causing mass violence. Not like the truckers protest in Canada. These are not peaceful protests anymore, and the general public is going to start turning against these protests.
They broke into everybody. All these fucking windows. Every single fucking window. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, and Minnesota was the one exception where they did have very, very large protests. I think they were trying to have a huge influx of money into that city. They think that's where it was going to really spark off. But with Trump kind of backing off now, he's really playing 4D chess, and maybe this was always kind of the plan.
And I will admit it does serve both ICE and the Trump administration if they leave Minnesota and then chaos continues and regular people in Minnesota that might have been supporting or at least saying, well, I mean, yes, we shouldn't have ICE here doing the terrible things they're doing. Now they're going to start getting more and more frustrated that it's still going on. There's no federal operations happening in the level that they were when they were protesting. And these crazy people have just continued to be allowed on the street doing whatever they want.
Well, yeah, and it's
encouraged by the mayor and by the governor of Minneapolis.
Well, that's what I was going to say. These are Democrat mayors, Democrat governors, and Democratic states that are sanctuary cities. And that's why there's so much problems here.
Mm-hmm. And we also saw, and I think this also points to the types of people that are involved in this. I believe this was in Los Angeles, and I hope YouTube doesn't get mad for us playing this clip because I did see
No,
it
it
was
wasn't
being
too
censored. But from 0 Hour 1, assaulting female journalists now in Los Angeles. How long are we playing this game? I don't know if the journalist has been fully identified yet. I tried to look for her name yesterday, but I couldn't find it. But clearly she was, I mean, she had a bunch of cameras. She was clearly just there to report and to take pictures.
Well,
but
we've seen in all these protests, whether it's Minneapolis, even some of the other smaller protests around the nation, they're very quick with their whistles to point out any journalist that they don't think is left-wing. They don't want right-wing journalists on the ground because the left-wing journalists will censor later on when they're editing, not showing a lot of the violence that's happening on the ground. They want to portray this as peaceful protests. And these things are anything but peaceful. I mean, they're not extremely violent right now, but they're much more violent than they need to be.
especially in LA. I mean, this guy looks more like someone involved in other things other than just protesting and a crazy lefty lunatic as we usually see them. He seems a lot more willing to do these kinds of things.
Well, the crowd also knows that he's not a normal part of the protest because they start yelling, punch her, punch her, punch her, and trying to egg him on. So when the crowd knows they have somebody on the verge of potentially doing violence, you're seeing them egg them on rather than the opposite. And I keep bringing up the trucker protest in Canada, but crime rates went down in the communities that those happen in because they did self-policing or community policing, while the truckers would do nightly walkarounds, making sure there was no crime.
That's a woman yelling at her, just for all the feminists out there. And they continue harassing her, throwing things at her. And because they're allowing anybody to join their protests, and I have seen and I've noticed more and more that there's these interesting characters that look more like what ICE would be going after, especially in Los Angeles and places where, I mean, gang activity would usually be. They're allowing anybody to come in. So at the end of the day, if something way more violent and horrible happens that even the leftists wouldn't be okay with, well, now they can't say anything because they need that support. And a lot of bad people could be supporting this. We do know that there is some sort of at least cartel involvement financially into these protests as well.
Well, especially in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I lived in Los Angeles for years, and cartel involvement is going to be heavy in Los Angeles specifically. Last week, we seemed to have a disagreement on the protests. I mean, that was evident for anybody that watched the show. This week, I think we're aligned. These protests are getting violent. Trump took the strategy of backing off, just like I kind of said he should. It's working out for him to do that, especially in that last clip when they kicked her down to the ground. I think at a certain point they realized, uh-oh, it's a female. This is probably on camera. But if that was a male, I don't think it would have turned out the same. We've seen something similar happen to James O'Keefe last week.
And to multiple other reporters as well, and people that just go there with an American flag. But we're also seeing it happen to residents of the places where they're protesting too, because now they've created checkpoints. Who else creates checkpoints? And we know this from experience and because I live here and I've looked into this. Cartels. That's who makes checkpoints. So they're literally doing the playbook now. From next door to our quote, even more leftist anti-ICE roadblocks are being set up near Minneapolis with residents forced to stop and identify themselves. The fact that they are putting up with this and that they haven't asked the mayor or somebody to do something about this so they can go to their own houses is insane to me, but this is what they're willing to put up with. I've seen Canadians put up with even worse. This is what cartels do in Mexico. Walton and Fry are allowing Americans to be terrorized in their own streets. I wouldn't even say the streets.
This is how you set up autonomous zones, and they did the Chop Chop zone in Washington State during the Summer of Love, and this is exactly how they start. And first they start peacefully, and next thing you know, the people doing the checkpoints have weapons. That's what exactly happened in in the Chaz chop zone. Nobody could come in or out of certain checkpoints. And then they started policing the streets, and then the streets started getting violent by the people that were actually saying they were the ones policing the streets, and no police were actually allowed in there. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to take over large portions of the city here.
And they already did try, I mean, recently, MAS zone, so Minnesota, Minneapolis Autonomous Zone, but it didn't fully work out, but now they're continuing. Like, who wants to live like this?
Yeah, and what the hell is this? I understand it's cold there, but you're saying you don't want ICE to be wearing masks, yet you have these vigilantes in the streets having blockades, doing ID checks, checking people's in the car, making sure they're not ICE, and they're completely masked up.
And I will mention, and I'm sure by now most of you know, we lived in Vancouver, BC, and in the Vancouver Art Gallery, and this is why I mentioned Canada, they had set up something similar, all regarding the mass grave hoax. They had teepees set up there for years, a year and a half almost, with trash piling up, with all these memorials that they had set up, but they would get like violent with people that would ask them why they were there, or they would ask them to move a little bit or open a gate so they could get through, because I mean the Vancouver Art Gallery is literally in the middle of downtown Vancouver, and it was just allowed to happen. Residents didn't have much say, and even though some businesses were asking for them to move out of the way and to somebody to remove them, they didn't, and they didn't want to do anything because of the virtue signaling and because of the narrative of the cause that they were supporting.
Yeah, it was an illegal protest where they just took over a large portion of the city. The government ended up paying them to leave. So absolutely ridiculous.
And you're just incentivizing this to continue to happen.
What's going on here is kind of a dry run, I think, for what comes in the summer. And if Trump's smart, he just backs off and let these cities burn themselves. And if the Democratic governors and mayors can't take care of the mess, it's going to be all over national news. And you may see Democrat states turn Republican.
Maybe.
Especially if there's no ICE in the streets. And then people are going to say, what are you actually protesting here? Oh, you're protesting the investigations we're doing about corruption in the actual government? Because the mayors and the governors are going to actually want these protests to continue, because they're not going to want their corruption within that state to be kind of rooted out. And that's the heart of this. It's not ICE, it's the corruption within those specific states.
It's what they're protecting from ICE and from federal law enforcement within their own states and within themselves too. I mean, we saw that some of Tim Walz's people in his cabinet were actually involved in the whole signal gate. They were giving instructions and even information to the people that were then chasing ICE vehicles and stopping the federal law enforcement.
But it's much easier to win the narrative war for these liberal mayors and governors if ICE is on the ground and they can build that narrative. But if ICE pulls back and they're just protecting federal buildings, which there's multiple examples of these protesters literally trying to burn down, especially in Los Angeles, it's going to be hard to build a narrative on that.
And we also see and have seen the continuing conversation around a potential government shutdown from next order. Quote, Chuck Schumer just announced he will force an extended government shutdown if the SAVE Act requiring proof of citizenship to vote comes to the Senate. Democrats know they will never win an election again if only the citizens vote. And we have said this over and over again, but people, even here in Mexico, think it's insane that in the U.S. they want to pass things where you wouldn't need any kind of voter ID to vote, or any kind of ID to vote.
Yeah, and ultimately, this is what this comes down to with trying to make deportations. I don't think they would be so aggressive on deportations if they had the SAVE Act come into effect. When you have a ton of illegals in the states and you don't need voter ID to vote in the states, it's going to corrupt elections, and it's going to make results that really aren't the results that the American citizens are voting for.
Short of workers, we have a population that is not reproducing it on its own with the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
And I would say this is probably the most important issue for the midterms. In the midterms, if conservatives can win, and the number one issue should be passing the SAVE Act that would require an ID to vote. Even if an ID can be forged, I mean, it's going to dramatically lower the amount of false ballots within the election or non-citizen voters within an election.
But also note what Chuck Schumer said there and the way he framed it. That Americans are not reproducing, they're not going to have enough people, so now they need to import all of these people, essentially giving the replacement theorist people a little bit of truth and fodder.
Well, it was very interesting because on the last time when Joe Biden was in office, there was mass illegal immigration coming across the border, and they were actually putting them on planes and on buses and pushing them all around the nation, probably where they wanted votes most, because you had never seen that before. I had always lived in the southern states when I lived in the United States, whether it was Florida, Texas, California, and you would have mass amounts of illegal immigrants, but they wouldn't be shipped all around the country. You got to be asking yourself, why were they shipping them around the country in the middle of the night?
Without any kind of knowledge as to where they would end up, not actually asking them to show up for their court dates or to continue their process into maybe some sort of legalization for themselves and their status.
Well, and they're so dead set against any ID to vote. They're saying it's racist, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Insane. And we also have seen, and there's been, the top of the news on everything, a lot of information about the new Epstein document dump and reveals. We don't have that much now.
I put one article in there. I'll talk a little bit about it because I did watch the entire 3-hour interview that Bannon did with Epstein, and it was very interesting. I think it's dull for most people that aren't that involved in politics like I am, but I'll kind of talk a little bit about it. And this is from that interview.
Yes. So from the Bitcoin therapist, quote, Jeffrey Epstein claims that Bill Clinton wanted votes in the election so bad he threatened the large banking institutions with discriminatory lending if they refused to approve subprime mortgages, which apparently ultimately led to the 2008 financial crisis.
The real enemy of the finance system was Bill Clinton. And if you ask me what and who caused the financial crisis, I would tell you it was Bill Clinton.
Because of what Bob Rubin and he did to deregulate the financial system?
No. Because as the last time we had our 60-minute interview, you talked to me about home ownership. And you asked me whether everyone should own a home. And I told you, no, it's too risky.
So the financial collapse of 2008 is because of hardworking African Americans, Hispanics, and whites who wanted to have an ownership stake in the society that all rests on their shoulders. They're the culprits.
No, not at all.
Okay, then
I didn't say they were the culprits. I was pretty clear it was Bill Clinton.
Okay.
And why was it Bill Clinton? Because Bill Clinton wanted to get votes from those people. And he sold them the idea that instead of renting in a house, and historically the values of houses have gone up, and he said, you guys in these local communities who haven't been able to afford a house before, I'm going to show you a way. I'm going to give you a way because I'm sure I'll get your vote that you can own a house because I want your vote. So what we're going to do is I'm going to let you buy a house, Mr. Bannon, when you're right on the border, maybe, or not even on the border, your credit is not good. Okay, let's be honest. And it's not my fault. It's not Bill Clinton's fault. But whatever happens,
you can kind of leave it there. But he goes back. He kind of goes into how the government guaranteed a lot of these loans, creating the financial collapse that happened the last time. But that interview was very interesting. It definitely seemed like him and Bannon had some kind of relationship before. They were kind of buddies, but kind of also Bannon was very envious or jealous of Epstein. At least that's how it kind of came off. Bannon was off camera the entire time, and you can see him. He keeps saying, you need to repeat the question because I'm not going to be on camera. He knew he did not want to be associated with that documentary. So they wanted Epstein to say all the questions. And then it was like a 60-minute style interview where the interviewee would not be on camera and you would not hear his voice.
The interviewer.
Yeah, the interviewer, sorry.
And that's it for breaking news. So we will read your comments now and respond to them. I do see we have quite a few, so thank you so much. Nan says, because we asked Nan what he was going to be cooking, and it says, my lovely wife will be making something, not sure what, but I won't get to eat it till I come home from nephew's basketball game.
Oh, fantastic.
Good luck to your nephew. Make sure you don't miss if they score. Nan also says people should keep their butts home. Yeah, especially when it's cold.
Well, I'm fine with people protesting, but when Trump actually made the right move, pulls ICE back, and then you're going to amplify the protest now, and then the protests actually start getting violent.
And disturbing for the people that live there that might have been on your side, but now they're clearly not going to be if you're stopping them each time they want to get to their house.
Well, and they're not able to get violence back. So the violence is only coming from the left now, where before it was a back and forth with ICE, and then hopefully they could get an ICE officer on camera, which they did 2 times. One of the times I didn't agree with. That being said, it's going to be almost impossible to get that now. Now there's hundreds of stories of breaking car windows, breaking into businesses, going after reporters, going after other protesters that they don't believe are actual leftists. So they're having purity tests on the ground. And like what I showed you is a good encapsulation of all the different kinds of protests that are going on. But I was going through hundreds of clips just to gather those few.
Rafa says, hello, Rafa.
Oh, good to see you,
Thank you
Rafa.
for being here. And Rafa says, any theory on why big cities concentrate so many leftists? There's less blue collar work, the accreditation and credentialization. I wouldn't know how to say that in English, but the requirement of having degrees and this whole narrative and idea that you have to go get a degree that became a pretty lefty.
No, women.
Lefty.
And I've actually looked into.
That's why it's a blue collar work.
Well,
jobs.
no, I've looked into the statistics on this, and funnily enough, the rural parts of states are primarily men, and a lot of these men are actually going overseas to find wives now. So what you're seeing is when they do find those wives, they're typically conservative and they want to keep them away from cities. But you're seeing women, when they become of age, want to move to cities.
Because cities provide the safety, quote unquote, and also the ease of not needing a man to do anything you want to do. You're pretty much can be reliant on the rest of the community to continue living if you don't have traditionally like a family structure, a marriage structure.
Yeah. It was very interesting. There was a statistician that actually went into that whole thing. I was watching him lay out a 2-hour presentation about that, but I didn't lay it out as good as he did. But
and women, again, mostly value safety and security. Men will value freedom and liberty and will fight for it on each side.
Well, and that's what you see with city voters versus rural voters. And that's why rural voters are very Second Amendment friendly.
And the mindset is also.
Yeah, and the problem with police is they're not stopping crime. They can only get there after the crime is actually reported. Mm-hmm. So, we'll leave it there.
Nan says, Portland, my hometown, for 47 years. I miss what it once was, and I'm glad I got the hell out of Portland or cities in general. Again.
But the future...
now I live an hour away from everything in a Washington coastal location. Nice.
Well, but the future's in Portland. Didn't you see those 5- and 6-year-olds protesting? God, I can only imagine what those kids are going to grow up to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I think either that or they will rebel against what they've been taught and what they've been indoctrinated with and become countercultural, which would be on the right and conservative. And maybe even we're seeing the polarization grow, especially amongst young people, because of the siloing that social media and algorithms do. So they might become even more extreme, like actual right-wing extremists. I don't think they will, but maybe. Nan says, my wife works in the city. That's why I don't have to go there, but maybe half a dozen times per year. Yeah. And again, women will always kind of be pulled towards the cities because that is where the kinds of jobs that they can do are, nowadays at least, and where the most safety and security and less reliance upon the patriarchy is.
Yeah.
Nan says, it's just terrible, isn't it? These people are being fooled into risking their lives and their freedom. It's sad, really. Those people are just useful dupes that have been propagandized perfectly. But yes, and I do understand the whole, I feel bad for them because they're just being stupid and they're just letting their emotions and their empathy or their false empathy rule. But at the same time, they could also employ some critical thinking.
Yeah. Also, when we're talking about why do women congregate in cities, I mean, they're very anti-Second Amendment, but gun rights are the great equalizer. I mean, if you put a man and a woman both with the same gun up against each other, the man is going to have the advantage. That being said, I mean, if a woman has a gun to protect herself, it's going to give her a huge advantage and peace of mind.
That is it.
but they very often vote against it.
Yes, of course, because safety and security. But let's move on to personality politics and the Grammys and the insanity that was.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And yes, of course, we're starting with this clip that you've probably seen of Billie Eilish claiming that nobody is illegal on stolen land, which is an oxymoron.
Not the average personality politics we usually have. We usually focus more on social media and social media personalities. Here, like, it's going to be clip after clip of the Grammys and just the insanity there. Now, not everybody was, and we do have a few clips kind of showing the other side.
Yeah, so when Wokeness says, Billie Eilish calls America stolen land. Okay, Billie, your $14 million mansion in LA is built where the Tongva tribes once lived. Any plans on returning it or just letting anybody that isn't, because nobody's illegal, so just let them sleep at your house?
Yeah, and a lot of people are bringing this up. Her actual house was on traditional tribal land. And usually that wouldn't matter for most people, but when you're going to make statements like this, it just makes you look like a hypocrite.
And also, both Billy and Phineas, who is her brother, grew up in a very wealthy couch neighborhood in Los Angeles and haven't known much other than luxury. Even though they tried to pretend like they came up from nothing, their parents were actually pretty big in the industry already when they became famous.
Well, with a name like Phineas. I didn't know that was his name.
That's the thing.
No one is illegal on stolen land.
Oh, Sabrina Carpenter. Look at her face. Like the blind, like she doesn't even know what she's clapping for. She just knows she's supposed to clap right now.
And anytime somebody said ice out or stolen land, which was repeatedly over and over and over again, it wasn't a normal clap. They got up, they were cheering, yes, yes, like it was absolutely insane.
What is that?
And yeah, it's just really hard to know what to say and what to do right now. And I feel really hopeful in this room, and I feel like we just need to keep fighting and speaking up and protesting, and our voices really do matter, and the people matter. And
that's kind of the point. Famous people's
and then she said advice after that. But
famous people's voices really don't matter anymore, whether it's sports stars, movie stars, or music stars. People are kind of over that. And I think social media has had a big influence on that. People are relating a lot more with ordinary people.
But also you can tell, and she's done statements similar to this before during concerts, where it is very clear when she talked about Kamala and how they had to keep the orange man out during a concert, it was very obvious and evident that she was reading from a prompter. And here you can really tell that she doesn't really know what she's saying. Like, I don't even know what to say. We just gotta keep, looking out for the people and she's saying nothing while saying, what she thinks is very empathetic and very virtue signally things, but that don't really mean anything.
Well, this is what you call a classic bubble. This is Hollywood meets politics and a bubble. They just don't realize what's happening. They think because of the Minnesota protest, which there was a couple actions by ICE that were inappropriate and out of line, that all these other protests that are popping up all around the nation have massive support for the people. So they want to be on the right side of history. What they don't realize is what's actually happening at this protest, or these protests are getting violent. ICE is no longer there, and regular American citizens are turning against this.
And again, the majority of American citizens did vote to do something about all the illegal aliens that are in the United States, especially the criminal ones, but all of them, and for closing the borders. So they're actually going against the mandate of the people themselves that they're trying to court, because that's what they should be doing if they want to continue with their celebrity and notoriety.
Well, yeah, Trump had the mandate to kind of get illegal immigrants out. Then there was a lot of pushback from even conservatives, I would say, after what happened with the 2 ICE agents. And he's making the right move now. And the protesters kind of won. Maybe it's time to go home. And if ICE starts coming back into the streets, yeah, go back and protest. But what you're doing is you're not doing your side any favors by causing violence, doing property damage to individuals' vehicles, businesses, and things of this.
And with that phrase specifically, we do hear a lot, and we heard it all the way back in Vancouver when there were protests there about either Palestine or whatever they were protesting about, this whole nobody is illegal on stolen land and the whole colonization diatribe that they always have. But the phrase itself doesn't make much sense. And I have seen a lot of other political commentators online pointing this out to Billie Eilish, saying, well, that sentence itself is an oxymoron, because how do you determine law if stolen land is everybody's? Then how can you say that nobody is or isn't illegal?
I disagree. We know what these phrases are going to go to. They are trying to bring communism in. They are currently doing it in British Columbia, where they're trying to take private property rights away from citizens. We cover that a lot on this show. If you're from the U.S. or somewhere else, you might not know what's happening there. But for well over 15, almost 20 years now, they've been using these phrases of stolen land, giving land acknowledgements, and now it's leading to actual taking of property rights from individual citizens, and they're legislating this in legal ways, and it's very, very dangerous. They want to spread this out to larger demographics into more countries.
Yeah, and we also see it in Australia, not as to the extent as in BC, but in BC, they've already returned land to First Nations tribes.
Okay, well, let's go into the next clip here, and it's Billie Eilish again, but again, this is a contradiction. This is an older clip, but I wanted to bring up this clip, especially when you put it back to back with the last clip we just had.
This is when she was in Ireland, from Jeremy Kaufman. She said, it's really cool because you can't really hear it. She says, it's really cool to come somewhere and everyone looks exactly like you. And she got a lot of trouble for saying this.
Well, as you guys know, I'm Irish, so it's... I am not from here, obviously, but it's really cool to come somewhere and like everybody looks exactly like you.
Well,
it is, isn't it?
I'm Irish. I'm not from here. I live on stolen land in the United States, but
on top of the Tongva tribe.
Nobody should live on stolen land. I mean,
but it's cool to see people that look like you surrounding you.
This girl is a walking contradiction. These PR people,
they don't know what they're saying.
Well, they do know what they're saying, because they all have PR people. They all have the same PR.
But they themselves don't know.
They all have the same PR agencies, and they're just saying, if you don't know what to say, just say ice out. Just say stolen land.
Yeah, it's lack of critical thinking, and I am also not worried. I mean, I do want to see what happens, but for the Oscars, because we do know what the runner, like the main movie that they're pushing, is about, and it's all about the same kind of, what is it called? You saw it, one battle after another, and it is almost all about the exact same thing that's happening right now, and they're going to continue to push narrative. That's why I think they're so into the wearing the pins and saying the ice out, and I support the people.
Well, speaking of Oscars, congratulations to Melania Trump for breaking records with her documentary film, even though it was canceled in countries, regions, and states all over the world. It was extremely hard to find here in Mexico City. We were supposed to go watch it yesterday. Yep. There was one showing one day, and it conflicted with our filming time. And
it was in the middle of also lunch.
And then then the Mexican newspaper wanted to write an article how it was a big failure. Well, these movie theaters didn't even play it. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen our video, though, we did make a video about Melania Trump, congratulating her on the movie and showing the controversy surrounding that movie.
But yeah, it was annoying to see one of the biggest newspapers in Mexico that isn't, I mean, it is pretty lefty, but not to the extent that others are, El Universal, coming out and saying, oh, the Melania documentary had such a disappointing start here in Mexico. They only played it for one day at like 3 hours, all during lunch, and in like 5 theaters that are the more expensive VIP ones. So they're not saying that part of the story, but they're saying, oh, it did bad because Orange banned bad.
Yeah, it's strange how even the cities that let this thing play, they strategically try to set it up for failure so they can have bad press, and they're having trouble finding bad press on this thing. Even Brian Stelter, we kind of showed the clip in our video, had to admit this thing is absolutely breaking records, and when it goes to streaming, it's going to do even better, because there's the people that couldn't see it. There's a 3-part miniseries coming along with this thing.
Mm-hmm. And now we're going to have to wait till then. But we also saw Don Lemon being there. I don't know why he's not in a jail cell. He's supposed to be, I mean, they did press charges against him. Riley Gaines says, violating the civil rights of Christians gets you a standing ovation, of course, from the Hollywood elites. That tells you everything. And I mean, I don't know what people expected. Of course, he's going to become the martyr of, the fight against Orange.
We disagreed on this on the last episode. I said he's going to become the martyr. He's going to get a big contract. He's playing this up on his show as we speak. and he's getting standing ovations when when he goes in public. By the time the summer comes around, just before the midterms, they're going to want this guy on national television so he can tell his story from his lived experience.
For me, it's more about how quick they are to forget, because a lot of lefties and feminists went against him after his comments about women. After the allegations of Me Too type allegations that he had, now they're all clapping for him.
Yeah, but there's a rearranging of the totem pole going on right now. He's black and he's gay, so I think he might be moving up right now.
Again. And he loves it. Like, he's just like, yes, clap for me. Clap for me. Life is so difficult. God.
Yeah, and those are movers.
In jail, so.
Those are movers and shakers in that room. His contract is coming. You better believe it. He's going to play this thing up on MSNBC. I don't think CNN will necessarily take him back, but
I was going to say something else about him. No, I forgot. And we continue to see more other musicians. Also, I wanted to put the picture up of, what's her name? Chappell Roan, but that was, it's not safe for YouTube, because if just Google the kind of dress she was wearing if you want to have your eyes scarred forever. And I'm amazed that was allowed, even, but from Paul A. I can't say that.
Yeah, but it did get her a lot of attention,
yes,
and she isn't an A-list star, so it is a way to push her into the media.
Is now. Musician Bon Iver, Justin DeArmond Edison Vernon, what a name, says he's wearing a whistle at the 68th Annual Grammy Awards to support anti-ICE protesters. Supporting illegals and violent Democrats is one of the most un-American things you can do.
Oh, he's got his rape whistle.
Ask about the whistle. Obviously, it's very prominent. What does it stand for?
It's to honor the observers in Minneapolis. They blow the whistles when they see ICE come in, and they're there to protect their community, and they've been doing it for weeks in 30 below. And I think that kind of work, it's really great to stop here and to celebrate music and to talk about the power of music and to recognize each other. But I think the real work is in the streets of Minneapolis right now, and I'm here to honor them as well.
I want to ask about the whistle.
They have no idea what they're talking about, really. Like, you can tell they have no real idea of what has been happening or what's going on or what it even looks like. I think they just hear about it. But it does really look like the Hunger Games. Like, they're at the Capitol, they're all dressed up, they're all feel like they're very important, and they're cheering on the Hunger Games that are going on the streets. But it's just dystopian, and I think the majority, especially of young people, are completely fed up with this, because we have seen a loss in viewership, a loss in interest in celebrities and musicians, a lot of new independent artists coming up and actually receiving a lot of support, be it on TikTok that I hate or Instagram or whatever. So we are seeing a shifting and an actual understanding of the virtue signaling that happens with the classical celebrities as we used to know them.
This is turning against them. They're all trying to give congratulations to the people in Minnesota, yet there's still protests and there's no ICE agents there anymore, or they're not out in the community like they used to be in force. So you're not having these confrontations. They should have took the victory lap, but if they took the victory lap, that would kind of end the protest, and they have activated all these cells all over the United States, so they need something to protest. And as long as Donald Trump sticks to this game plan, it's a good game plan. It's going to turn the general public against them and make them look ridiculous when they're wearing their whistles, talking about the real work's being done in Minnesota where there's no ICE agents.
And luckily, that did kind of happen during
I won't say no ICE agents, very little ICE agents, and they're not active like they used to be.
And funnily enough, something similar did kind of happen with the whole Me Too movement. Like, we did used to see a lot of female and male celebrities during the red carpets wearing their little Me Too pins and being all outraged about it. And then when it started to come out that a lot of the stories, especially the whole Amber Heard, Johnny Depp thing, was fake, and a lot of the actual information started coming out, we saw them quickly pivot and not really want to mention Me Too. And anybody that did or did want to continue with the narrative got kind of ostracized out of Hollywood. So, I mean, like Rose McGowan and a lot of other of these really real feminist celebrities that used to have all the support behind them, it was quickly dropped as soon as they realized and the narrative and the perspective of the people had changed.
Well, let's go into the next clip. And this next clip isn't so much to make fun of him, although I didn't necessarily like the joke. I think liberals would have, but Trump has to be careful here. Let these people tell the jokes, lean into the jokes when they're making fun of you. Don't threaten to sue them. Don't threaten to go after free speech. I mean,
technically it could be interpreted as defamatory.
Yeah, but that's the issue. When you're saying technically it could have, if you let freedom of speech reign the day and people will love you for it. And he usually does that. In this case, He's saying he may do something different.
From Chief Nerd, quote, Trevor Noah made a defamatory joke about Trump going to Epstein's Island. What are you going to do about it? And President Trump responded almost immediately saying that he's going to sue the S out of him.
That is a Grammy that every artist wants, almost as much as Trump wants Greenland, which makes sense. I mean, because Epstein's Island is gone, he needs a new one to hang out with Bill Clinton. So, I told you it's my last year. What are you going to do about it? That is a Grammy.
It's like he wants to be Ricky Gervais, but he doesn't know how to. And I do miss the GOAT, Ricky Gervais, telling them to shut the hell up.
Well, and he did that again this year. We're going to have a clip in a little bit, or at least a statement he put out, which was bang on the money.
Hold on. Oh, but just finishing off with Trevor Noah.
Oh, wait, you need to go back to that because you were supposed to read the statement from Trump because that was the story. It wasn't what Trevor Noah actually said there.
Hold on, I closed it.
Oh, you closed it. Yeah, so the story wasn't actually Trevor Noah's joke. I didn't think it was bad at all. I don't think there's anything there. But Trump's statement was really going after him, saying he's going to sue him for it. And that's a little bit ridiculous, especially when you're supposed to be the free speech president.
Yeah, so
I like Trump, so I think he'll walk this back eventually, and I don't think we'll see a lawsuit out of this.
So Trump said on Truth Social, the Grammy Awards are the worst. Concur. Virtually unwatchable. Also concur. CBS is lucky not to have this garbage litter their airwaves any longer. The host, Trevor Noah, whoever he may be, is almost as bad as Jimmy Kimmel at the low ratings Academy Awards. Noah said incorrectly about me that Donald Trump and Bill Clinton spent time on Epstein Island. Wrong. I can't speak for Bill, but I have never been to Epstein Island nor anywhere close, and until tonight's false and defamatory statement, have never been accused of being there, not even by the fake news media. No, Noah, a total loser, better get his facts straight and get them straight fast. It looks like I'll be sending my lawyers to sue this poor, pathetic, talentless dope of an MC and suing him for plenty of money. Ask little George Slopadopoulos and others how that all worked out. Also ask CBS, get ready, Noah. I'm going to have some fun with you, President DJT.
Yeah, bad move going after comedians, even if you don't like their jokes. So,
but I will admit, Trevor Noah is insufferable.
Yeah, but that's from your point of view. From a leftist point of view, he's leaving. I think he's leaving already. Good. It's his last year, he said.
From my woke days, I actually did watch him live in Vancouver, if you believe that. All the way back then when that was like, what, 12, 13 years ago? From Ricky Gervais. And this is what he posted right after the Grammys and all the vapidness. They're still not listening, he says, because way back then and the Golden Globes multiple times he said similar things, but the most famous is he said, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech. You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spend less time in school than Greta Thunberg. And exactly.
And it was bang on the money. I think more people should have took his advice. That being said, a few people were smart enough not to make political statements, or to
give other nicer statements.
Well, maybe they were political because they were somewhat religious statements, and I'm sure a lot of the crowd did not like that. And his PR firm probably didn't like it as well.
But this is the second time he does it. He did it at the Country Music Awards.
Yeah, I absolutely love the fact that he did this. And this really set him apart from everybody else. Everybody else was ice out, don't be on stolen land. And he really praised God. And it was
so Benny
commendable.
Johnson says, while the rest of Hollywood is giving speeches about defending illegal aliens, Jelly Roll, who is this gentleman on stage, used his time on stage at the Grammys to praise Jesus Christ. And there was also a very, in my opinion, bad joke about Nicki Minaj that Trevor Noah did too. Speaking of Christianity.
I know they're going to try to kick me off here, so just let me try to get this out. First of all, Jesus, I hear you and I'm listening, Lord. I am listening, Lord. Second of all, I want to thank my beautiful wife. I would have never changed my life without you. I'd ended up dead or in jail. I'd have killed myself if it wasn't for you and Jesus. I thank you for that. I thank you for my label, Broken Bow. Country Radio. What's up, y'all? Oh, Republic chiming in and we get it, baby. There was a time in my life, y'all, that I was broken. That's why I wrote this album. I didn't think I had a chance, y'all. There was days that I thought the darkest things, I was a horrible human. There was a moment in my life that all I had was a Bible this big and a radio the same size and a 6x8 foot cell. And I believed that those two things could change my life. I believed that music had the power to change my life and God had the power to change my life. And I want to tell y'all right now, Jesus is for everybody. Jesus is not owned by one political party. Jesus is not owned by no music label. Jesus is Jesus, and anybody can have a relationship with him. I love you, Lord.
Yeah, and it was good to see somebody kind of step out and give a different opinion and not bring the normal kind of politics in there.
And I kind of want to figure it out because I feel like I've seen that clip and it was either from the CMAs or maybe they did the ceremony before the other one. So I don't know if all the ridiculous people were in the room while this was happening, but I hope they were. And is that it? No.
No, there's one more.
One more thing. From J.D. Haltigan, quote, "This is the core of the leftist female mental derangement. They cannot accept the reality that patriarchy is inevitable, that civilization is masculine coded due to the evolved biological differences in society."
Okay, and this was the section of personality politics, and everything else was related to the Grammys. I didn't know where to put this story, but I just wanted to kind of put this lady in here, and I think this kind of encapsulates a lot of what these protests are and who these protesters are.
Of course, patriarchy and white supremacy tolerated liberal white women as long as those liberal white women remained performative and stayed in line. They let them disagree with the system as long as they weren't making any real dents in that system. But what's happening is it's not just liberal white women that are waking up, it's all white women. And of course, patriarchy and white supremacy, having not evolved at all, are going to use their same play from their same playbook. They're going to demonize one group of white women and try to get white women fighting with each other, policing one another, so that we lose focus. And in reality, the problem isn't liberal white women. The problem is men, white supremacy, patriarchy. They've never protected any women. They oppress women, treat us like their property, dismiss us, abuse us, use us for our physical and emotional labor, refuse to give us equal pay, to listen to us and protect us when we say someone hurt us. Why should we remain loyal to that? What I love about this is that more and more white women are waking up and more white women are talking to other white women about it. We're recruiting and we're joining with all women. The powers that be are obviously scared and I love it. Articles like this don't work anymore to get women in line. All articles like this do now.
Okay, and you can kind of leave it there, but I am very concerned about the future because there is this generation of women that really hook, line, and sinker bought into feminism, and now they're getting older. They're alone, and men aren't even taking a second look at them. What they're going to is the next generation. The next generation isn't buying it as heavy,
and they're realizing that that's what happened to the ones that did. They're ending up alone and with no prospect of a future or a legacy to leave behind.
These older women should be telling these younger women the lies of feminism, but instead they're radicalizing themselves, going out to these protests and trying to say, we made the right decision. We made the decision to change the world to make an impact, and this is how society is going to treat us. And they want to try to recruit the next generation. Hopefully the next generation's a little bit smarter, and I think they are.
Well, because for them and for the ones that are and want to continue with the propagandizing, it's the sunk cost fallacy, where they don't want to admit that they wasted their entire lives going and chasing after dreams of a career and of just working for another man, a boss, or even a lady boss, but whatever, wasting your youth and also the rest of your life just in a career focused on something that somebody else told you should be doing, instead of what maybe even biologically your own body and your own mind tells you might be a good idea eventually, maybe even down the road, maybe even when you're younger, but they didn't allow themselves to do that. So the cognitive derangement that they're having and the cognitive dissonance that they're having in having to admit, yeah, this was not actually a good idea for me. And at the same time, having to say, well, but I need to defend it because, again, I've sunk my whole life into this. So I can't say that it was bad for me because that would be admitting that I wasted my entire life. And who wants to do that? Nobody.
Okay, let's go into, if we have any comments, yes. And then we'll go into MAHA. We have one story there, then U.S. politics. We're going to put the EU first because it had a little less stories, and then Canada's pretty heavy today.
Rafa says, the music you use for personality politics section is funny. It's a song by an indie.
Oh, it's the best song. If you don't know it, just put the Alex Jones song.
No, but I want to give the artist's name. His name is Nick Let's Go. So it's by Nick Let's Go. It's from a long time ago, from like 6 years ago.
It's an old song, but the very end of the song, man, it's very prophetic what's going on with the Somalis in Minnesota today, because he ends the song literally almost foretelling that a decade ago.
Yeah, say they love their Somalis.
Yeah, it's a fantastic song. I used to listen to it every day, and it gets me every time I listen to it. Yeah. And it was supposed to be more of a meme song because it's Alex Jones lip singing the words, but man, it's good.
So Nick, let's go, I think. From Rafa also, most of these celebrities do substances. How can we expect them to have common sense? And they're not really there. You can see they have no life behind their eyes. So they just say either what they think they should say or what their PR team or whoever is behind them, or their label, etc., wants to project onto the world. They're only there to be projections of what the elites want the people to know.
Yeah, and pretty soon they'll be gone. They have these AI contracts coming out now. They've recently paid the one gentleman $900 million for all image rights, all of his social media and everything else, and they're just putting out an AI version of him. I think it's going to be very similar with a lot of these other celebrities. They don't want them actually out in the media where they can say something that could really hurt a movie or something like that. So they're going to be kind of brushed aside and given their last payment to get their houses or whatever.
And we
they
don't
want.
see, and I continue to say this, we don't see the same energy behind the younger celebrities that have been coming up and the ones that they've tried to make into these huge Hollywood movie stars. There's just no energy or fans behind them. We do see a lot of fans behind social media influencers, which I also don't love too much because I think a lot of them are retarded.
But musicians on social media are doing very well, and I'm specifically thinking about the conservative rap artist Tom McDonald. Yeah.
And again, there is that energy there, but less so. And it, once again, has become a lot more siloed into the algorithm and into what, the algorithm just wants you to see what you already like. So there is no discovery. There is no finding new artists, people, things, movies. And I do think that that's a shame.
Yeah, but we were just talking about meme songs with that chapter marker. And I'm finding a lot of artists that do meme songs that are actual artists actually break through through that because it breaks through to the culture and then people discover their music. So it's very interesting how politics and music are really kind of merging now.
Well, politics is downstream from culture, as the great Rush Limbaugh used to say. Let's move on to health, MAHA, and education, which only has one story, but important either way.
But the great of all would be to do nothing.
And we're talking similarly kind of about video games. And this, I also saw this video it went kind of viral.
This was very, very interesting. And I come from this generation, and I always thought participation trophies and walking people through so they never have failure in life was the wrong direction to go. But now they're starting to really find out that's the case.
And the ladies talking, I'm not such a big fan. I don't really know who they are, but just looks-wise. Starting with Craig says, quote, "This nails the difference between 90s kids who played video games and the Gen Z kids that we see nowadays, and how they also relate to the world, and how video games could help change that, in my opinion."
A psychologist explained why 90s kids think differently than Gen Z. The games you played as a kid literally rewired your brain. Here's what changed. He said children in the 90s played games that forced the brain to fail and try again. Mario, Sonic, Prince of Persia. You had 3 lives, no saves, no hints. When you lost, you learned patience, planning, and frustration tolerance. Today, many games guide kids step by step. Cheat codes. Auto-save every 10 seconds and remove real challenge. Tetris, Doom, Quake, Zelda, you had no map, no path arrows. You remembered layouts, patterns, secrets. Scientists now show that these games strengthen the hippocampus, the part of the brain for memory and navigation. Modern games often give glowing lines, GPS arrows, voice assistance. Kids follow instruction instead of figuring out. A psychologist explained why...
And what they were really teaching was how to win and how to lose on a repeated basis, because that's what life is. You're going to lose a lot of the time. And anybody that played video games back in the 80s and 90s, you lost far more than you won.
I thought you were going to say more things, more profound things.
I never.
I mean, that was profound.
I never say anything profound.
But I mean, because that's it for health, MAHA, and education.
Yeah,
so.
Let's go into the U.S.
Okay. Where is it there? And again, with the breaking news, it does seem like we were just talking about the U.S. this whole first section, but now more focused on this. So from Ian Miles Chong, I know neither you and I like him too much, but Trump published a video telling Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens to shut the F up.
Yeah, and I thought this was a good video, and I praise Trump, and I like Trump a lot. When he does something bad, I will point it out, but I always focus on a lot of the good he's doing as well. A lot of people are just really trying to take over the political conservative movement after Trump's gone, and they're getting ahead of themselves. They're really sabotaging the midterms and potentially even the 2028 election when they do this.
Do you remember what it was like when the 2020 election was rigged and stolen? Do you remember all the bullshit stories people told you about how the fraudulent election would be overturned? Do you remember the symbols of tyranny when fences went up around D.C. for Joe Biden's inauguration? Do you remember watching fuel and food prices skyrocket in a matter of months? Do you remember watching our borders being invaded by a virtual army of unidentified criminals? Do you remember watching our nation get systematically destroyed for 4 years by the Joe Biden auto pen administration? Do you remember longing for the days of winning when we had Donald Trump in the White House? Do you remember thinking he was going to die when the bullet aimed at his brain only grazed his ear? Do you remember rejoicing after witnessing the miracle that saved his life? Do you remember celebrating the epic landslide victory in November of 2024? This is what you hoped for. This is what you prayed for. This is what you voted for. So why are you questioning every decision he makes now that he's back in office? God didn't save his life so he could make mistakes. He knows what he's doing. Maybe it's time to shut the fuck up and let him cook. This has been a public service announcement paid for by the Dilly Meme team.
Yeah, and that I say the same thing.
Did he actually post that?
Yeah, he made that. They made that. That was from the administration. He needs to make more things like that.
That's at the Dilly Meme.
Absolutely, let him cook. He does a lot of things I don't agree with, and I'll point it out. But I also point out a lot of things he did do. Let's not forget all the things that he has done. He has been very impactful. Now, I don't live in the United States. I'm a international Trump supporter, and internationally, this man has resorted the entire globe. Now, he's had to do it a little bit heavy-handed, but man, I want to see what he does over the next 3 years. The problem is if he doesn't win the midterms, they're going to absolutely freeze him out and try to impeach this man.
I mean, even here in Mexico, he got our current regime to stop sending oil to Cuba and just start using it on their own people.
Well, and also
just with that.
And also, I'm going to say this: yeah, let him cook for the next month, for the next year until the midterms come out, and make your decision before the midterms. If you don't like what he's done, but you really are going to need to weigh it out between pros and cons, because when I look at Trump, that's really what it is. And for me personally, there's a lot more pros than cons. And the cons, there's the Epstein files, the way he used to support the jibby jab, but they kind of turned that around. Sometimes he goes in a little bit heavy-handed, but he hasn't started a forever war. So I'm thankful for that. But yeah. Okay, let's go into...
You had Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, right?
Yeah.
From cryptocurrency quote, Jack Dorsey just sat down with the CEO of Norway's 2 trillion sovereign wealth fund, walking him through Bitcoin's vision and future. When Bitcoin is being discussed at this level, you know adoption isn't real, it's national.
Yeah, and the idea of Bitcoin and stable coins, because the U.S. really wants to have the world digital currency, but they want to build in freedoms. So people from other regions choose the U.S. currency because they don't want the CBDC from their own country, because it can be programmed and it can be used against you.
Around. Enter Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a protocol for moving money around. If Bitcoin is used not just as a store of value, but as a currency to move money around between people, or between businesses and people, or businesses and businesses, as that becomes more and more a thing, which I do think it becomes over the next 5 years, then we can launch Cash App and Square in every single country that has the internet. And that allows us to serve more people better, faster. And because Bitcoin is open, it's not controlled by one company, it's not controlled by any one government, it's completely transparent. People can see what it does, and we can solve all the problems that we would task with governments and companies to solve by doing it transparently and by doing it openly. Because again, it's the internet and it goes to internet principles. So I'm hoping these financial systems take on more internet principles, and we can truly be an internet company instead of going market by market by market, which is just a really slow way to build for the world. You can't build for the world. You can only build for these particular markets that you happen to be approved in. And again, you have to be approved by another company. You have to be approved by these things that don't have your interest or even their customers' interests at heart.
So what needs to happen for Bitcoin to function more effectively?
I think it's happening right now. Like more and more people see that it's valuable. Every time that number goes up.
And you can kind of leave it there. And yeah, I'm not a fan of CBDCs. I'm not a fan of digital currencies in general, but if we're going to adopt a digital currency, I want one they can't just automatically make more of out of thin air, alter the ledgers, things of this nature. CBDCs are very insidious in the way they can be programmed, canceled. And we've seen with the truckers convoy, how they were canceling people's bank accounts.
Mm-hmm. And in California, we just showed a bunch of protests that are going on in LA, but there are other things going on that apparently the citizenry isn't fully aware of. From Max Bonilla, quote, California on track to have a per mile tax by next year. People protest ICE, but ignore this. 41 California Democrats voted in the state assembly to potentially impose a 2 to 9 cent per mile tax on drivers.
Yeah, and I think he's going to explain it pretty good here. So
the people here
and this is the ICE protest, but he's actually reporting on a completely different manner, which I just think is absolutely ingenious.
Protesting against ICE have absolutely no idea that their rights were completely violated yesterday by the California state legislature. In the assembly, the Democrats, by a simple majority vote, voted to advance a potential per mile tax. Yeah, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's not a rumor. They just tasked a California Transportation Commission to come up with recommendations by 2027 to be able to implement a per mile tax that would charge you 2 to 9 cents for every single mile that you drive. And you know why that's insane? Because we're talking about families of 2 or maybe even 3 paying an extra of $1,200 to $4,200 every single year just to drive, depending on how that estimation ends up coming out. So you are going to be punished by the government for needing to fulfill work and familial obligations. Add on top of that the fact that the U.S. House decided that cars that are made past 2026 should continue to have kill switches in them. This was a decision that was made by the Biden administration, and it really irritates me. It should irritate the American people. Because imagine if in a state like California, they sent you your quarterly or your monthly billing for the per mile tax, and you refuse to pay it. Then they're going to what? Kill switch your car? Oh, yeah, no. You're not paying your per mile tax. Uncle Sam didn't get his money. Now you don't get to drive. The worst part of all that is we're supposed to trust them with our money? I mean, a report just came out that we threw $236 million or something at a homelessness program that was run by, Newsom, trying to get people who were going in between the streets and crime off the streets permanently and not into crime and, a stable living, a stable life. And we only helped 22 people out of that. Are you kidding me? That is absolutely ludicrous. You're telling me we spent somewhere between 11 and 12 million just on each of those people? Gavin, he does not know how to handle your money. And the last thing we need is a per mile tax where we throw more at him. And they're not taking away the gas tax either. They'll just compound that on top of it.
Absolutely fantastic reporting. I've never seen that kid report before. The way he did that, having an ICE protest in the back and then talking about the laws they're currently passing to go against those citizens. These are taxes on your regular worker, on your average citizen that are really going to impact them. These ICE protests have very little impact on what's actually going to happen in these people's lives. Hopefully we see that kid again because I absolutely
his name
loved
is
it.
Max Bonilla. I did want to bring it up back up. It's at outragedteen_. So,
and I don't think I subscribed to him, so I'm going to subscribe to him after we're off the air here because I forgot to.
And again, he seems like he should be at the protests. Like he seems the kind of person. But it is ironic, and we have talked about like the mismanagement of California, both by Karen Bass, who we just saw saying that nothing's happening, the protests are all under control, and especially by Gavin Newsom, who might start his candidacy for 2028, and he might start implementing everything he wants to do to then run on that. But if more things like this come up during debates or during people questioning what his policies would be nationwide, I think it's really easy. It would be really easy to take him down at least a couple pegs if more people knew about this, and if more Californians, actual people that will suffer from all the things that he has implemented and the money he has wasted, spoke up.
Well, and he's going to try
But they're concerned and yelling, nobody's illegal on stolen land.
Well, he's going to try to use these ICE protests to his advantage. So seeing a young Mexican guy kind of speak up specifically against Gavin Newsom and his policies was absolutely phenomenal. We put Newsom on the cover because that's always where these protests end up. They might start in Georgia or Minnesota, but really a lot of that money is coming out of California and it's protected there where a lot of these organizations are actually headquartered.
Mm-hmm. But another state that now has an annoying dumb mayor is New York. From USA News. And this, I will say, take with a massive grain of salt, and maybe you want to explain it a bit more before I get into it.
Yeah, I would say the Epstein files came out. This was another huge reveal in that Zoran Mondani's mother was highly, highly connected to Epstein for years, as well as the Clintons and other major political figures. They basically brought her up, and a lot of leftists now thinking Zoran Mondani was a plant. They try to make him look like he was this organic candidate that did it on his own. It doesn't look like that was the case at all. And they're protesting him at his house. It's leftists that are speaking up against him the most now. And it's kind of funny because he just got into office. He was the golden boy.
Okay, so do you want me to read it?
Yeah,
all?
read the whole thing because you're doubting what's in there.
I am.
Okay, so let's read the evidence here.
Okay. From U.S.A. News, again, massive grain of salt, use your critical thinking. Quote, the chances that Jeffrey Epstein is Zoran Mamdani's biological father are way higher than you think. His mom, Mira, was a prominent filmmaker in New York in the 80s and ran in the same circles as Jeffrey's. She produced a creepy documentary called Children of a Desired Sex in 1987, only a few years before Zoran was born. Believe it or not, Zoran's mom was married to a man named Mitch Epstein from 1981 to around 1989. The word around is notable because that is literally what it says on her about page. Sounds like she is lying about the real year. Conjecture. She met her second husband, academic Mahmoud Mamdani, in 1989 during film research in Uganda, married him in 1991, and then Zoran was born in October 91 in Kampala. The probability that he was conceived in wedlock are very small based on the timeline. Conjecture again. Mira and Mitch Epstein reportedly had no kids together, despite being married for around 8 years. Considering Epstein and Mitch Epstein, who they say are unrelated, have very similar backgrounds and both look similar, it is safe to say she had a type. Conjecture. With the likely overlap of her marriage, allegedly, I will say. With meeting Mahmoud, she probably also wasn't a stranger to cheating either. Allegedly, thanks to the second file drop, we now know that Mira and Jeffrey had at least some kind of relationship in the 2000s. She was named in a 2009 email from publicist Peggy Siegel to Jeffrey Epstein about an after party at Ghislaine Maxwell's New York City townhouse after a screening of her film Amelia. How did the two even know each other? Presumably because they had been friends or more for a long time, allegedly.
And there's a ton of pictures coming out, her with Epstein as well as the Clintons.
Mira started with low-budget documentaries in the 80s, founded Mirabai Films in 1989, and hit big with Monsoon Wedding in 2001, over 30 million worldwide. Her net worth is estimated between 5 and 22 million now. Built fast through indie hits, grants, and Hollywood gigs like The Queen of Katwe. Questions linger about whether connections like Epstein's network could help with funding and opening doors for her in the 90s. If her only child, Zoran Mamdani, is in fact the biological son of Jeffrey Epstein, that would explain a lot, allegedly. If you are in blah, 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 blah.
Okay, and we can go into the next article because it is connected to this one.
Again, conjecture, allegedly, use critical thinking.
Okay, well, you're a big Zoran Mamdani fan. I'm not so much. But
I'm a big critical thinking.
These are actually leftists here. And there was a ton of clips of people on the left, once these files kind of exposed a lot of the history of Mamdani and his mother, that they're not so confident he wasn't a plant now.
So from Eric Doherty, quote, New Yorkers are developing buyer's remorse for Zoran Mamdani, a lot of us told you, spotted heckling him and yelling shame after basically nothing is going according to plan. We advocated for you, we voted for you, you get up in here and lie to us.
That's right, we know about the mom. We voted for you, Zoran. We advocated for you, Zoran. We advocated for you. You ain't get up in here and lie to us. Shame! Shame! The first line was CRB, Zoran. Shame!
Okay, and you can kind of leave it there, but you can. The first thing he says was, "We know about your mom, Zoran." So directly after these documents came out, leftists started kind of turning on him. Again, there was a ton of clips from leftists just absolutely shocked, saying, "What are we going to do about this?" Other ones just outright are denouncing him now. But we can take a quick look at New York in the next clip.
And I mean, I'm surprised that this is what they're latching on to when they should be latching on to the fact that they're going to have no money if Zoran continues down the path he wants to.
This is a clip of New York, and the fact that they're worried about Epstein and his mother, I'd be more worried about the state of New York under Mamdani.
From Thai's Tough Talk, quote, all it took was one storm and Mamdani transformed New York City into the slums of India in less than a week. This is the line. We can't have the sound.
And just garbage on garbage on garbage. And these photos have been coming out of New York for quite a few days now. But I thought it was the perfect opportunity to show what's been going on in New York here under Mamdani. He just took office not too long ago. This shouldn't be happening. This wasn't happening under the previous mayor. I mean, it was at one point, but it was because there was a garbage strike. There's not a garbage strike right now, as far as I know.
And I will say, I went to New York, in 2019, I think, to visit a friend. And I mean, it was winter and there was garbage piling up all over the place. But I mean, again, New York has been run by Democrats anyways. This is just the largest iteration of Democrats. But to that extent, it wasn't that bad when I went.
That's not garbage. That was literally a wall of garbage. It was like seeing the Great Wall of New York, like the Great Wall of China.
Disgustingness. Okay, now we can move on to the European Union, another place that decided to import the third world and now suffers the consequences. And I started with that because it seems that Spain is going even further insane under Pedro Sanchez, and their plan is becoming, I mean, they're just yelling it out loud by now. From Concerned Citizen, quote, meanwhile in Spain, some say we have gone too far. The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez just came out and addressed the country over his government's decision to grant citizenship to over 500,000 immigrants.
In one day.
They said it was for votes, too. Notice how this man is also a World Economic Forum Marxist, and we'll never talk about the levels of crime and gang violence growing throughout Spain.
And this is one of the few times he actually gives an English statement. That's why I put it in here. But man, he is taking that country down a dark path of Marxism, communism, and he's willing to do anything, including legalize 500,000 immigrants for the votes.
And those from his party are literally just saying that out loud. They want to replace the Europeans.
Yes, my country has offered a path to regulate 500,000 undocumented migrants. 500,000 people we live with every day, at the market, on the bus, at our children's school, people who care for our parents, work in the fields, who have built hand in hand with us the progress of our country. People who were already here, already part of our lives. Some say we've gone too far, that we're going against the current. But I would like to ask you, when did recognizing rights become something radical? When did empathy become something exceptional? Spain is above all a welcoming country, and this is the path we choose: dignity, community, and justice. Yes,
when you start flooding the country with legal and illegal migrants that weren't wanted, that repressed wages, that absolutely destroyed the fabric of your society and is absolutely killing the culture like it's doing in the rest of the EU, that's when it became unpopular. And he's not the only politician in the EU. I mean, they're coming right out and saying it. This might have worked maybe 5 or 10 years ago when people were on the side of mass migration, but people have woken up to this lie and they don't know how to sell it anymore. So they're just coming right out and saying it.
And he used the word empathy. And I have been seeing a lot of good essays about empathy because, funnily enough, going back to the States, Hillary Clinton wrote an essay in The Atlantic about how the right has forgotten about empathy and how the right is not empathetic, and Christians are using empathy as a weapon, which is literally confession through projection, because that is what the left has been doing for 20 plus years, 30 years, and what she has done specifically. And it has been interesting to see the discourse regarding empathy and how empathy is weaponized by the left to continue enacting policies that only serve them. And similar as to what the Democrats have been doing for the longest time in the States for the past, 10, 15 years, trying to defend illegal immigration, when before they were completely against it as well during Obama's term. More people got deported then and in much more crueler ways than we're seeing now, but no protests were happening then because they want to continue to be able to import essentially a slave class to he said it, to pick their fields, to take care of their aging parents, to take care of their aging population.
To vote for them.
And to vote for them. Yes, that was what I was getting to at the end.
Yeah, that's how the elites are maintaining their power. It's through mass illegal immigration and legal immigration at this point to change voting demographics so they can meet the needs of the illegals rather than meet the needs of the actual citizens.
Which more and more is what I was getting to, especially in places like Europe, Canada, the U.S. The population collapse is at an alarming rate where people will no longer be, the generations have already shrank for graduating classes in the US and Canada. And in Europe, it's more old people than young people, except the ones that they're importing.
But that's not an excuse. You need to rethink the system on how you actually make a good economy for individual citizens rather than the government and the elite's GDP of the country. You can make a good country for citizens and a good life for citizens if you focus on, how to do the basics, how to make a nationalized economy that benefits everybody in the economy rather than filling the politicians' pockets with money.
And encouraging families and actual prosperity for the citizens that are already there, not wanting to import new ones that will let you continue your reign from up on high.
Yeah, they want the easy solution, and that easy solution is illegal immigration, which is absolutely destroying countries.
And Irene Montero goes even farther, also from Spain, but she's insane.
You're going to have to read this one, so turn down the volume and then just read what she says. It was absolutely insane. They're just coming right out and saying this. After we read it, we'll play it again so you can see the tone of her voice. I mean, she's really going at this, and we just seen a politician saying something very similar. Now she's saying it, and there have been a few other politicians as well.
From the same ilk. Eric Doherty says, quote, leftist politicians in Europe are now admitting their plan to carry out a replacement of Christians and white people with migrants. I want to ask you, migrants and racialized people, please don't leave us alone with so many right-wingers. And of course, we do want them to vote. Of course, we have achieved papers, regularization already, and now we're going for the nationality or to change the law so they can vote. Of course. I hope replacement theory, hopefully we can sweep the right-wingers and racists this country with migrant people, with hardworking people. Of course I want there to be a replacement of right-wingers, replacement of racists, replacement of scroungers, and that we can do it with the people, working people of this country, whatever the color skin you have, whether it's black, Chinese, brown, all comrades, the working people of this country.
Comrades.
Yeah, of course.
They're absolutely ridiculous. They're just coming out. The mask is now off. They realize they're losing. Trump has been playing 4D chess on a global stage, and he is winning big time. I know a lot of American first people aren't happy he's focusing enough on the United States, but if he doesn't focus on a lot of these global issues, the attacks are going to come from outside in and to absolutely undermine his administration.
And a lot of people don't know how bad Spain actually is and how bad the immigration stuff has happened, because it is one of those gateway countries that then spreads out towards Europe, but a lot of them stay there. And there is a lot of crime, and there is a lot of grapes, and there is a lot of things that go unreported, especially under the government of Pedro Sanchez. From Electroverse, quote, Spain once had the fastest growing solar sector of Europe. 2007 subsidy law guaranteed huge fixed payments for solar electricity, and investors poured in.
Yeah, this is just crazy. And when I seen this, it's just like, this could be used as farmland, as housing. It's just disgusting to see these chemical solar cells just all over the land in mass. And this was completely subsidized by the government. And it's not actually profitable unless it has a subsidy by the government, which is actually being paid by the citizen.
And let's also remember the massive blackouts that Spain suffered last year.
The Chinese are running their electrical grid, and they're not doing a good job of it either.
Do you want me to finish reading it, or?
No, you can play it. I think it should.
Do it, okay.
Spain once had the fastest growing solar sector in Europe. A 2007 subsidy law guaranteed huge fixed payments for solar electricity, and investors poured in. Then the economics collapsed, and the government couldn't afford the scheme. Between 2010 and 2012, Spain retroactively cut the subsidies it had already promised. Thousands of solar operators went bankrupt, with more than 62,000 investors hit. Banks wrote off $30 billion. And international investors sued Spain in more than 40 arbitration cases. Across the country, half-built and abandoned solar farms sit idle. Ghost infrastructure from a failed policy. Spain tried to engineer a solar boom with subsidies. Instead, it produced one of the largest renewable bankruptcies in the world. Spain once had the fastest...
And the trash.
Well,
and the chemicals that leach into the ground that make it unworkable for growing any kind of agriculture in there.
And this was the green scam in full effect. Windmills, it's the same story. They can't even sell their wind farms now, and they're just deteriorating because they're unrecyclable. They're just burying these windmills in the ground after their 10 or 15-year lifespan. This green scam was a complete scam for the elites to absolutely put money in their pockets. And I have a feeling, and I was talking to you about this the other day, they're doing a lot of good AI propaganda. I think the new green scam may be AI repackaged in a way to get much more investment than it's actually worth.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of scams getting more investment than you're worth and now being completely bankrupt is the United Nations. We already spoke about this briefly on Friday, but from World News, quote, in a bombshell announcement, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has issued a dire warning. The United Nations is on the brink of total collapse if the United States, which contributes approximately $2.2 billion to the regular budget alone, does not give more to the UN.
Well, when we talked about this on the last episode, but now there's an actual clip of the United Nations talking about it, or somebody from the United Nations. So
yeah, the Secretary General.
The Secretary General has, as you know, repeatedly made clear the problem both of non-payment of Jews by member states and the related problem of the UN being forced to repay member states for budget expenses that it does not budget money that it does not spend, so those two factors have put us on an unsustainable trajectory. Although more than 150 member states paid their dues last year, we ended 2025 with a record $1.56 billion in outstanding dues, which is more than double that of the previous year. So unless either the payments come in, or we're not compelled to spend to return the monies that we are not able to spend because we didn't receive the budget, unless one of those two things happen, we face a real danger of running out of money.
This is
Sounds
absolutely
like a
ridiculous.
kid trying to explain why he crapped his pants.
It's time to, I'm not saying get rid of the UN right here. That's not the worst idea. But what I am saying is they need to work on a hairstring budget. They have 156 member states all paying their dues. And they don't have enough money. No, they have a spending problem. The United Nations actually doesn't get anything done. Nothing of consistency. That's why Trump is trying to make a new UN. Just work on a hairstring budget and figure it out. You have money coming in, so it's not like you just need to cut your programs down.
And it's been, again, mismanagement, corruption, and the discovery of the mismanagement and corruption that has also made other member states and other just people in general that don't want to be involved and don't want to have a supranational entity telling them how to govern their own citizens or govern themselves, have started to say, okay, let's stop this. And that is it for Europe. But Rafa says, most despicable woman in Spain, Irene Montero, yes, and again, she is from the same ilk and the same kind as the actual Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez.
Yeah. Spain is not in a good position, but the whole EU is in not a good position, and neither is the UK.
And Trump told them to their faces. And initially, when he told Germany, they laughed in his face, and now they're suffering the consequences.
I like Trump, but I do understand how he can come off as brash, but he's telling people directly to their face what they need to do to be a superpower or to stand on their own 2 feet. They need to do things for themselves. You don't outsource your energy to Russia, outsource your manufacturing to China, and outsource your military to the United States, so you can't do anything self-sufficient for yourself. I'm talking about Europe here. I mean, Trump is telling them cold, hard facts. They need to get their shit together. Rather than get their shit together, they're trying to transition over to China.
And they have already. Again, we just saw UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer also bouncing over to China and making new deals because now the world powers have shifted, as Carney said. Speaking of Carney, let's go to Canada and the disaster that awaits everybody there. And indeed, we have been hitting Canada pretty hard this past week, and this coming week we will continue with edited videos. But because, one, we're from there, but two, there is a potential of some kind of real change happening, and for people to discover what is actually going on in Canada, which they've hidden for so long.
Yeah, what could happen in Canada with these separatist movements? These could be people taking control of their province in Canada, but similar in the United States to the citizens taking control of the state. They actually want to separate. It looks like it's going to happen in Alberta. Most likely Saskatchewan as well. And then we'll have to see what happens to Quebec. And now there's talk of BC as well. I was just watching articles on that today. But this would change the paradigm of what it means to be a citizen in the country compared to the elites. The elites think that the citizens have no right to really say anything. The new democracy is run by the elites, not by the citizens. At least that's how the elites see it. This would change that paradigm and really give the power to the people again.
Because Canada continues to do retarded things like this. From Table Salt, quote, Canadian Health Minister Michelle, I'm guessing, has sealed reports on vaccine safety for 15 years. The reports contain several million pages of information, so safe and effective you can't even talk about it for 15 years.
Yeah,
so
and by the time
this is the COVID jab.
By the time that 15 years comes around, nobody's going to be able to get any prosecutions off these things or anything else, and people will have long forgotten about it. And if it's brought up, it's just another scandal that happened decades in the past. Yeah. This is absolutely ridiculous. There's a lot of court cases kind of coming to a conclusion right now in the United States and even Europe. Bill Gates is supposed to testify in one. The more countries that seal the information and don't let it out, this is just another example of why you can't trust your government, why Albertans, Saskatchewans, and Quebecers need to leave the country. You can't trust your government at this point. And actually, the other day we were talking about Alberta and the stance they took on the jibby jab after they realized they made mistakes. And they came clean about their mistakes. And they released a lot of documents and they said they made wrong decisions. And this is why people in Alberta are really of a different ilk, and they trust their politicians a lot more than the rest of Canada. I'm not saying
unless they don't let them separate.
I'm not saying they're perfect, but it's not the Liberals.
But the Conservatives do continue to be in hot water because in Canada, Conservatives are basically just Democrats from the States. The Pleb reporter says, quote, Canadian media members caught on camera admitting they are purposely going easy on Mark Carney to help keep the Liberals in power. CPAC tried scrubbing this segment from the internet, but here are the receipts.
Yeah, and he's talking to a bunch of journalists here, and he's talking about 100 and something journalistic outlets have your back, Mark Carney. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is the mainstream media literally saying that we're only going to report for one side.
Prime Minister, know that every person in this room and the 180,000 people who work in this industry have your back, just as we know that you have ours.
180,000 journalists,
all subsidized by the federal government.
Billions of dollars they make payoffs to, and they literally say it publicly. That's how comfortable they feel.
Mm-hmm. And again, independent journalists are not considered journalists in Canada. They don't have the same access to ask politicians questions that the people want to ask, and independent-minded people want to know from their politicians. And it's continued to be that way while they subsidize the mainstream media to just continue with the narrative that's convenient to them.
Yeah.
As I was talking about, the Conservatives, this is the one I was actually trying to go to. But
we used to work with Billboard Chris, and that's why I often use his articles. But in this particular case, this is right up his alley, and this is the exact, what would you say?
What? The exact what?
The exact topic. The exact what? What are we talking about? The exact topic of his kind of his expertise.
Yeah. What he focuses on. So Billboard Chris is an activist against the mutilation of children that powers that be have decided are trans. There is no such thing as a trans child or teenager.
Let's read the article and watch the video.
Billboard Chris says, as conservatives around the world wake up to the insanity of child transition, not one member of the Conservative Party of Canada has objected. Their new leader, Pierre Poilievre, voted to criminalize parents who want to prevent their own child's mutilation and sterilization.
And this was absolutely ridiculous. And there's quite a few votes at this leaders conference where Pierre Poilievre won, and I do agree Poilievre is the best option for Canada as a whole. That being said, it's time for Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Quebec to leave, even if he gets in, because he can't make the changes that are needed to be made, because he can't win a majority government because of how they have taxation without representation, meaning a vote in Ottawa is not worth the same vote in Alberta.
And that was a post from 2022, and back then it was already an issue. And we've mentioned Pierre Poilievre, while he might seem like more conservative than the Liberals, he has also taken quite his time on making statements or coming out with his opinions about controversial issues that might sway some voters one way or another away from him. So that is the problem with conservatives in Canada, that they have essentially no spine.
It's not that they don't have a spine, Natalia.
In my opinion, it is that they don't have a spine.
Yeah. Okay.
What were you going to say?
It's not that they don't have a spine. It's if you look at the demographics and the voters' demographics, he can't win Canada unless he makes a big tent movement. The only way to make a big tent movement is to sacrifice his first principles. And the more first principles he sacrifices, conservatives just aren't going to vote for him at a certain point. They would rather vote to separate than vote for Pierre Poilievre.
And speaking of separating, from Mark Nixon, quote, Alberta is done with Ottawa. This interview was a masterclass. Jeffrey Rath slams Bassi Capellos. We're now going to be captured by communist China.
This was a fantastic interview. He's one of the big leaders of the separatist movement in Alberta. He's a lawyer. He's very well educated. He may not come off that way in his appearance, but they're lucky to have this gentleman kind of negotiating the pitfalls of what could happen.
Can you understand how, on the face of it, Canadians would view some Canadians outside of the ones that support your cause, who are not necessarily unempathetic to the frustrations expressed by people in this province, but who would view the idea of, people here meeting with a government that has, spoken the way it has about this country as a whole as problematic and seeking money to make this happen.
I understand that there's a lot of Ontarians and people in Quebec that suffer deeply from Trump derangement syndrome, but we're not doing anything untoward. It's absolutely, from our perspective, we're just conducting due diligence on behalf of our fellow Albertans. We're serious professionals. I mean, I've argued cases at the Supreme Court of Canada, for goodness sake. I mean, we take what we're doing very seriously, and obviously the attitude of the United States towards Alberta independence, which incidentally is overwhelmingly enthusiastic, is something that informs our movement going forward. If the United States said, oh God, we can't tolerate that, flies in the face of, the communist New World Order, we'll slap a 300% tariff on Albertans if they leave because we want you to remain resource slaves of the communist government in Ottawa, it would be a totally different conversation. But that's not the case. We're gratified that it's the case. And quite frankly, the Trump administration shows Albertans far more respect than is shown to Albertans by the government in Ottawa. Do you think three of us could get a meeting with Tim Hodgson to talk about the need for a pipeline to the Pacific Northwest so that David Eby can't continue to hold us hostage? Of course not, because they want us to be held hostage. So, so I understand that there are Canadians that are upset, especially in Ontario, that when Alberta leaves, that Ontarians for the first time in their lives are going to have to pay their own bills and pay the bills of the Maritimes that we've been paying for years. I understand that's upsetting to people, but they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Do you believe the motivations of the people you're meeting with or in the Trump administration are altruistic? Like, do you think they want what's good for you and people who support your cause, or do you think that they're trying to leverage this to get the upper hand against the country of Canada as a whole?
I've studied foreign policy at the university level. I have an honors degree in political science, and I have an honors degree in law from the London School of Economics. Don't you think that communist Ottawa is leveraging communist China against Alberta? I mean, come on. I mean, we live in the world of realpolitik.
But you don't mind being a pawn in that fight?
We're not a pawn. I mean, we're talking to them about our aspirations, and we have our goals and objectives. So, we're not a pawn. We're actually more like a rook or a queen on a chessboard, moving forward in the direction that we want to move freely on the board. The pawns are the provincial premiers like Danielle Smith that are being manipulated by Carney and Eby and communist China to do their globalist bidding, as far as I'm concerned.
When you mentioned that you've met with people in the State Department, you feel as though that message has been conveyed to Scott Bessent. That's why he made the comments he did. How high up are the meetings that you're taking? Are there names, for example, of people that you're meeting with that we would recognize offhand?
I'm not sure about that, probably. I mean, we're meeting at a very high level. People in our meetings are going, direct.
Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to say. I mean,
why not?
We're not, because we have an agreement with the people that we're meeting with that we're not disclosing the identities of the people that we're meeting with. So
why not? May I ask?
Because it's an agreement. So that's all.
But again, would it be reasonable to question the motivations of making that agreement?
Well, that's probably why we're not talking about it. We don't want them being bothered by people from the press in Canada asking them silly questions. They don't want to be wasting their time answering questions from the press, right? And we're fine with that. We don't care. I mean, we know already that our meetings are paying dividends when the U.S. Secretary of Treasury is announcing the fact that the U.S. would be open to a pipeline through the Pacific Northwest to take David Eby and communist China out of control of the Alberta oil field.
May I ask then, in a different way, have there been conversations, among yourself or people in the movement with, for example, as high as President Trump?
No. Well, I mean, I haven't. I'm not sure about David Cameron. He's not really part of our movement and part of what we're doing. He's the leader of the Republican Party of Alberta. He claims to have been to Mar-a-Lago and whatever. We don't need to meet with President Trump. We're really technicians when it comes right down to it, right? At the end of the day, our next delegation to Washington, we're going to have bankers, economists, corporate lawyers, et cetera, to help with this feasibility study that we're conducting, right? And we're going to be putting together, what a potential deal memo could look like, and put together a complete dossier so that we can just hand it over to whoever the government of Alberta is in power and say, hey, if Ottawa is giving you a hard time, here's an easy way out. There's a large credit facility that's available through Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or whoever in the event that Ottawa tries to cut off your money.
And I wanted to play that whole clip because it's incredibly important. We started ramping up our coverage of these independence movements, and Alberta's going to be the first up to bat. It looks like they're literally set to hit a home run, and they're doing their homework, and they're going to help the other provinces if they do need help with these feasibility studies, with getting money, loans based upon their natural resource output and things of this nature. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And those in Ottawa cannot stand that.
No,
that's why they continue to complain about it.
That was a fantastic interview. She was shell-shocked. She did not know he was going to say those things, call the Canadian government a communist government. And this Chinese-Canada dealings that's going on in the background are really going to help this separatist movement, because they want to frame this as the separatists are the traitors. But really, it's the Canadian elites betraying Canadians by going to China and trying to make that your major trading partner.
And there are a lot of issues with Canada, from Albertan AF, quote, everything wrong with Canada in 60 seconds. And yet Canadians refuse to acknowledge it. Part of the reason why I also wanted to leave, because it's a lost cause.
Yeah, and it's a shame. A lot of Canadians already lost hope, and they left once Mark Carney got into office. We left a little bit before that, but It would be interesting if Alberta did separate, how many people would want to go back to Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you the most realistic rundown of Canada right now in like 60 seconds, okay? Canada has now become like a really naturally beautiful, gorgeous person that has all the potential to be rich in so many ways, but has horrible self-destructive habits and doesn't take care of themselves. What we have seen from our government over the last decade is them putting on a clinic of wasted potential, self-destructive decisions, mismanagement of all of our major sectors, and just massive policy failure. And you know, everyone says Canadian citizens are so nice. And you know what I've come to realize, unfortunately, is that Canadians in general are just really soft, and no one wants to say that. Look, it's not about left or right, okay? This is just objective. Canada's really not doing well. Justin Trudeau and his party put us decades behind in so many ways. And then when we had a chance to stop the bleeding at the very least last year, we thought it would be a good idea to vote in the same people that got us into this mess in the first place. Our economy has performed as one of the worst in the top 40 nations on earth in the last decade. We have a housing and affordability crisis right now. Business investment and innovation have collapsed. We have one of the highest tax rates in the world and nothing to show for it. Our healthcare sucks. Everyone knows it. There's so many issues. Crime rates are at a place I would have never even imagined in this country. Our immigration is a dumpster fire. We now have more bills being pushed that threaten free speech than maybe any other nation on earth. Our mainstream media is government funded and literally isn't even able to give us the objective truth. We've never had a worse global reputation. And now our prime minister, instead of working on strengthening our partnership with the U.S. and making a deal, the most powerful nation on earth, our most important ally and trading partner, and is the main reason why we have any national security, by the way, is now sabotaging our relationship with them. All because he's trying to act tough against the big bad orange man.
Yeah,
you know what? It turns out elbowed up.
And that's a huge point. Yeah, the U.S. is finally telling Canada to invest some money in their military, but they're not asking for a massive investment. They get free protection from the U.S. Why aren't they investing in their country? The state of Canada should not be the state of Canada. I mean, we're going to be covering that all this week, coming up with a slew of different videos on why the Canadian economy is the way it is.
Just made a lot of you feel good, but it's really just incredibly destructive for us. And everybody here is so focused on Trump with the complete inability to look in the fucking mirror. You know what? It's like we're the weakest player on the ice in a hockey game, and we're going up to the best player on our own team and trying to pick a fight with them instead of working with them, while we flirt with the most dangerous player on the other team, China. You know what? Elections certainly do have consequences, and Canada has been seeing them for 10 years now. And you want to know the worst part about it is we have half a country that doesn't even see it yet. I still love the potential of this country that we've seen before. Our country isn't our biggest problem. Our leadership is. I do believe we can come back from this and change course. And I hope the rest of the world knows that not all Canadians are soft, virtue signaling cowards, but it's going to take a good amount of our citizens to wake the fuck up. So if you're with me, keep ringing the alarm bells and having the courage to point out the obvious truth of people who don't see it. Countries throughout history with elections ultimately either thrive or destruct based on the spread of good or bad information. It's beyond time to wake up and smell the communism, Canada, and that's the fucking vibe today, baby.
And he put it great there, so I played the whole clip, but yeah.
And I mean, you enter into communism by voting, but you leave it through bloodshed and tears.
Yeah, I really think they're this final push, because Donald Trump threw such a monkey wrench into a lot of their plans. They're just taking off the mask like we shown in Spain, and they're just going to full-fledged try to go for communism. The EU has re-steered course towards China. Canada's doing the same. They're saying mask off time. We're going towards communism. Time to vote for socialism. And here's your UBI. Just shut up and give us the power.
And it's insane. I arrived in Canada while Stephen Harper was still prime minister, and then Justin Trudeau came in, and literally year after year, things got worse and worse and worse. And you can just see the end. There was no end to it.
And they just keep voting for it.
What they keep voting for it, but it wasn't what also immigrants, for example, the ones that did want to go there, contribute, build lives in Canada, were promised in the brochures. And we're also seeing even recent immigrants to Canada, legal immigrants to Canada, say this is not at all what I thought it was going to be, because they still want to project this outside image. And it was really frustrating when I was there, and when I would complain to people that didn't live in Canada about the state of Canada, they didn't believe me. And I hope now more people can continue to see the actual truth. But we see from Harrison Faulkner here as well. Quote, former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says Conservatives should make no apology for opposing annexation threats from Trump. We are and again, this is the type of
and
conservative
he's not a real conservative. He's betrayed the people of Canada. The fact that he used to run Alberta is absolutely ridiculous.
As a lot of conservatives have too.
But how you feel the Conservative Party in this country should address what is clearly an important issue, the Canada-U.S. relationship. What do you think, as someone that is a prominent conservative that's been very vocal, how do you think the party should address this issue?
I think with patriotism, we're the founding party of Canada, the party of John MacDonald, and we should make no apology for opposing the constant destabilizing threats and economic warfare coming from Donald Trump. This is a man who said in January a year ago that he was going to use, quote, economic force to annex Canada, who has, repeatedly posted memes of Canada as part of the United States, who recently threatened to invade a neighboring NATO ally in Greenland.
And the same context or the same tone he's using to really go against the U.S. here. They were saying the same thing about the tariffs, but Canada was always the one tariffing the United States for decades, or the United States barely tariffed Canada back. And when they finally woke up and they started tariffing Canada, it was an economic war and everything else. So
insulted the honor of our troops. So we need to start with an understanding that Canada is not to blame for the disruption in the relationship. Now, of course, we should strongly criticize these insulting, degrading attacks on our dignity and pride as a country. We also have to deal with the reality. And first of all, I think make it clear, for example, if he gets deeply involved in the Alberta separation project, that there will be serious sanctions and that we need to build the kind of alliance that Denmark did that caused him to backtrack on the Greenland threats.
Yeah, and there's two kinds of conservatives in Canada primarily. That's populists and him. He represents kind of the rhino neocons of the United States, but in the Canadian context. And that's the problem with voting conservative in Canada at a national level. And that's why a real conservative populist movement is Alberta, is Saskatchewan. If they separate and try to stand on their own 2 feet, I think it's going to work, and I hope they do. And they have real conservatism there.
But what's also insane is that what Donald Trump is essentially telling to all countries, but he's saying it in a forceful way, so maybe they'll understand, and in a not so diplomatic and hoity-toity way, is take care of your countries first, so we can then trade, and we can both bring up our own countries and make it an even better partnership. But that Canada and a lot of countries take the notion of putting their citizens and their countries first as an insult. That should tell you all you need to know about the leadership in those countries that put Canada first for once as an insult from the United States.
Use your resources to get the money and build the infrastructure and bring the business in. This will benefit your people. The elites don't want to do that. They want to benefit themselves by taking payoffs from China to build legislation so they can't even access their own natural resources.
And things like this happen, and it'll continue to. From Harrison Faulkner to Pierre Poilievre says Canadian citizens now open more businesses in the United States of America than they do in their home country. That's elbows out. And
this was
they know what's happening.
This was during his leadership speech. We're going to show another clip from that. He was absolutely phenomenal there. He won in a landslide, so he is continuing to be the leader. He's the best option on a national level, but again, I can't say it enough times. Alberta needs to separate. Because, he's not going to be able to make the changes that are needed. As much as I like a lot of his policies, he's having to compromise on too many things.
Canadian citizens, this is an incredible fact. Canadian citizens now open more businesses in the United States of America than they do in their home country. That's elbows out. Amazingly.
Yeah, and that's just absolutely crazy. Let's go into the next clip, and that was from the leadership race as well.
From CBC Watcher.
And we don't need to read the whole thing.
Poilievre. I won't. I'm just trying to set it up.
And we need to unite this country like never before, because a house divided cannot stand. Here we go again. Liberals are in power, and just as night follows day, separatist movements are in resurgence. Back in Quebec and here in Alberta. These movements, which had been dormant or even dead when Prime Minister Harper left office. Now, we can simply attack people who feel this way, or we can ask them why. Why in Alberta and Quebec? Why, particularly among young people in those provinces, have so many lost hope in Confederation? Well, here's a few hints. For the last 10 years, Ottawa has told our young people that our history is filled with shame and horror, that we are a post-national country with no core identity, and that our youth will never own homes. But other than that, they should feel great about being united in Canada. All the while, the federal government stomps on Alberta's energy sector and Quebec's jurisdiction. Now, our message to those youth and to all of the people in Alberta and Quebec who are losing hope in our country: you will again have a country that respects your autonomy, is proud of your industries, unites us around our common identity and history, a country that will afford you the hopeful future that you have earned.
Okay, and that's good. And I wish that was true. And I wish Canada had a better future than it does. Even if Pierre Poilievre gets in, the way the Canadian political system is set up, it's really rigged against Conservatives in favor of Liberals. And it's the way the voting structure is managed. The East Coast of Canada gets far more votes than the West Coast. And it's not because of people, it's because how much each vote is actually worth.
But from Scott Robertson, quote, so many Conservatives actually like Mark Carney, apparently, and maybe they didn't vote for him last election, but they're openly saying they would vote for him if there were an election now.
Yeah, and
that's called, I mean, what's that called?
This is confession through projection, but this is coming up because of the leadership race in Pierre Poilievre, because he won in such a landslide. They know he's a threat. They're trying to gaslight the people on the national news. This is absolute rubbish.
Stockholm syndrome. That's what I was trying to say.
So many Conservatives actually like Mark Carney. And maybe they didn't vote for him last election, but they are openly saying that they would vote for him if there was an election now because they think he's the right man to face off against Donald Trump. So many Conservatives.
Then they're not Conservatives. Then they're not Conservatives. Like, honestly. That's that easy. That's the distinction.
And let's go into the last clip of Canada before we go into the Middle East. And then we're going to head over to RUMBLE.
And this is kind of what we were talking about with the whole no one is illegal and stolen land and the consequences of where it leads. From Rebel News, quote, no compromise on private property rights. Member of Parliament Aaron Gunn draws a red line amid BC land disputes. Do you want me to just play it?
Yeah, let's get into the clip because it's quite a long clip, I believe. We're not going to play it all, but we'll play maybe the first half here.
Okay.
And again, I believe this was at that leadership conference that Pierre Poilievre won for the Conservatives.
The Conservative Convention in beautiful Calgary, Alberta, with my guest, Aaron Gunn.
That's Tamara Lynch that's interviewing Aaron Gunn. She was one of the leaders of the Freedom Convoy.
And then Aaron Gunn is a YouTuber, independent journalist, now member of Parliament as well. And he just came up with a documentary also that seems pretty interesting.
MP from North Island, Powell River, BC. Thanks for joining me, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
So day 2 of the convention, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, I think there's a lot of energy in the room. There's a lot of unity, despite what you might hear on the mainstream media. And a lot of talk about how this country in so many ways is worse off than we were 10 years ago because of Liberal and NDP policies, whether it's on the fiscal side of things, whether it's keeping our resources in the ground, handing out free trucks. And we've been, myself, other MPs, and we just heard from Pierre articulating an alternative vision for Canada, where we make smaller government to make room for bigger citizens.
Yes, exactly. And so some of the, as you were just talking about, some of the biggest concerns I think for Canadians right now, obviously, is the economy and the resources. So some of the solutions that you guys are going to put forth, what do you have in mind? Like Bill C-69, for example, Bill C-48, those types of, that type
Well,
of
repealing that kind of legislation. So, you know, Mark Carney and the Liberals, they've talked a big game about setting up this special projects office to try to streamline process approvals, development approvals. But it's the Liberals' own policies that are stopping all of these developments from happening in the first place. And we just say, you know, it's not that this country, we have so much ingenuity of the Canadian people. We have such an incredible wealth of natural resources.
You can leave it there. And it is a fantastic interview. I recommend watching the entire thing. That being said, he's kind of describing the issues the Conservatives are going to have even if they win. There's been so much legislation set up against accessing those natural resources. Again, the Conservatives, even if they win an election, they're not going to win a majority government. So they're not going to be able to get a lot of things passed.
And that's why I say because of the legislation that has been passed over the past 10, almost 15 years, and the bureaucracy and all the things that stop development or anything that anybody would want to do to change it, it would take another about 10 to 15 years to actually reverse it or to get to the country to a point where people think it could just happen if they voted Conservative.
Well, and they added another layer of government when they added First Nations. A lot of things need approval through First Nations. So even with a majority government, I don't know how that's going to work. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to have massive NGO protests, money coming in from China to fund these protests, much like we're seeing what's happening in the States with a different issue, though.
Mm-hmm. Now we'll go to comments because we have one from Rafa. Rafa says, off-topic question, but since there are no more comments, I'll take the liberty. Guy, did you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
Oh, yeah. I used to love Dragon Ball Z. I used to watch a lot of anime, but before anime was popular. So it was Ninja Scroll and Dragon Ball Z and a few other things.
I have no idea about anything about that. That was it for the questions for Canada. So let's move to
the next section. The story is tangentially related to the Middle East, so I added it in there, but it's actually from the U.S.
Okay, and also we will talk about Latin America. There's a few things for Wednesday because we did see an election in Costa Rica, and I also wanted to correct something that an author
Well, yeah, the right wing won in Costa Rica, so congratulations to them. It's the election in Colombia is looking good. It looks like it's going to go right as well. And Brazil, out of nowhere, it looks like the new Bolsonaro, which is different than the old one, potentially is going to win that. Not only potentially, it looks like he is favored at this point. The only thing left will be Mexico at that point.
And Mexico's bending over backwards to please
But
Trump anyways.
the election's not until 2030. So
Yeah, it's 6 years here.
so the 2028 election in the States will, I think, dictate the 2030 election in Mexico.
And it's just one story tangentially related to the Middle East from Tommy Robinson. It says, why are libs like this? Listen how they suggest Khamenei's regime is more pro-women's rights than Trump, which isn't that this is the kind of thinking that retardation leads to.
Are you pro-women's rights? Of course. Being pro-women's rights, who do you think is more for women's rights? The Trump administration or the Iranian regime?
I don't know. Don't really know anything about the Iranian regime, but I'm against Trump, so I guess I'll go Iranian regime if it's between the two.
What rights do we not have here as women?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't want to be in this anymore.
You had to pick.
If I had to pick, like, gun to my head, shoot me, like, I don't.
Iran?
Yeah.
Iran is in the Middle East.
That's yeah. Well, probably not the Trump.
Bruh.
Okay, if I had to pick, probably Iranian militarization. Like, Trump is just evil in so many ways. Yeah.
Okay, so do you think the Iranian regime is more pro-women's rights?
Yeah.
Are you pro-women's rights?
And that is Ariel Scarcella. She's a lesbian Trump supporter, and she openly says that she walks around with a hat that says lesbian MAGA Trump supporter, and they almost tried to hit her one time.
Well, and a lot of those individuals did not know a lot about politics, but I was watching a debate today, and a question off topic came in from a caller, and they asked the liberal on the panel, and he goes, would you support the regime change in Iran? And he goes, yeah, without a doubt, except if it's Trump. They're like, it doesn't, they're not concerned.
That makes no sense, though.
Yeah, he said, well, then he clarified, he said, if it was anybody else, I would completely support it. And went into all the exact reason was why he wants regime change in Iran. But if it's Trump,
unless Trump does it.
unless Trump does it, he doesn't want it done if Trump's going to be the one doing it, which is just
They don't want to give
breaks
him the
your
win.
brain. Now, I'm not necessarily for regime change in Iran. That being said, but I do know liberals support it immensely.
But that's it for here. Now we have spicy stories on RUMBLE, same channel name. You can find it there. You can just go to that channel name on rumble.com. And we'll see you in a few seconds.
And if you're not subscribed,
Yes,
please do so. We've been posting a video a day. We're going to continue to post a video a day. So if you haven't taken a look at our video section, go take a look. We just talked about Melania Trump today. So again, congratulations to her and a new film.
Okay, we'll see you in a few seconds over there.